Tonight, we are walking into a world where the sea is never merely water, where an olive tree can decide the destiny of a civilization, and where the anger of a god can remain alive in stone for thousands of years. You begin beneath a dark Mediterranean sky. Above you, the stars seem unusually close. Their pale light spreads across the hills of Attica, touching scattered farmhouses, narrow paths, and groves of silver-leaved olives. Somewhere beyond the hills, waves move against the rocky coast with a slow, patient rhythm. You can smell salt carried inland by the night wind. Cypress branches whisper, far away, perhaps from a sanctuary on a distant slope. A sacred fire burns beneath the open sky. Ahead of you rises a limestone hill. Much later, the world will know it as the Acropolis of Athens. But tonight, in the imagination of myth, there is no Parthenon glowing above the city. There are no marble avenues crowded with philosophers, politicians, merchants, and foreign visitors. You're entering an older landscape, where memory and legend have not yet separated from one another, and somewhere in this landscape, two gods are approaching the same hill. One comes with the sound of the sea. Poseidon is among the oldest and most dangerous powers worshipped by the Greeks. You know him by the trident in his hand, by the horses that thunder across the earth, and by the storms that rise without warning over open water. Sailors speak his name carefully. Fishermen pour offerings before dangerous voyages. Coastal communities understand that a calm horizon can become violent before sunset. He is not simply a god who rules the sea. He is the sea as ancient people experienced it: generous, necessary, beautiful, and impossible to control. The other presence arrives differently. Athena does not announce herself with crashing waves. You imagine the quiet shine of bronze beneath moonlight, the measured step of a warrior who does not need to display her strength. She carries the spear, but she's not consumed by battle. She belongs to strategy, craftsmanship, disciplined thought, weaving, civic order, and the intelligence required to survive a dangerous world. Poseidon possesses force. Athena possesses control. And before this story is finished, those two forms of power will collide. Before you travel deeper into their rivalry, you may gently like the video and subscribe if these long journeys into ancient mythology help you relax. And as you settle in, you can share your location and local time in the comments, imagining all the distant places listening beneath the same night sky. Then the journey continues. The mystery begins with a simple question. Why did Poseidon hate Athena? Ancient mythology rarely gives you a single clean answer. The Greeks inherited stories through generations of oral performance. Local religious traditions, poetry, drama, temple ritual, and regional memory. A myth told beside the sea at Corinth might emphasize something different from a story remembered in Athens. Even the famous contest for Attica survives in different forms, but beneath those variations lies an unmistakable pattern. Poseidon and Athena repeatedly stand against one another. They compete for cities, their powers overlap, their favored mortals clash. In the Odyssey, Poseidon becomes the relentless enemy of Odysseus while Athena becomes his divine protector. In traditions surrounding Athens itself, the rivalry becomes embedded in sacred geography. Even stone seems to remember it. Much later, visitors to the Acropolis were shown a place associated with the blow of Poseidon's trident. Nearby stood the sacred olive connected with Athena. Whether every detail preserved a very ancient belief or developed across generations remains debated. Yet surviving evidence indicates that Athenians deliberately kept the memory of both divine claimants within their sacred landscape. That is strange. Athena won, yet Poseidon remained. You can already sense that this story will not end with one god defeating another. Imagine standing on the Acropolis before dawn. Cold stone presses beneath your bare feet. The wind carries the smell of smoke, wool, olive oil, and distant seawater. Somewhere below, dogs bark among sleeping houses. Beyond them lies the dark line of the coast. Then you hear thunder. There are no clouds above you. Ancient listeners would have understood the unease immediately. Thunder without a visible storm, a trembling earth, an unexpected movement of water, these could become divine signs, warnings that the ordinary world had briefly opened towards something greater. In later tradition, Poseidon's presence would be associated with a mark upon this hill, a wound in the landscape itself. But what was it warning about? Perhaps the answer begins before Athens existed. Before the olive tree, before the trident-struck stone, before Athena had even entered Olympus. To understand Poseidon's resentment, you must first understand the world into which Athena appeared. Poseidon was not a minor deity protecting one harbour. He belonged to the generation that defeated the Titans and divided existence among themselves. He was brother to Zeus, ruler of Olympus, and Hades, ruler of the dead. He had watched one cosmic order fall. He had helped establish another. Power, territory, and honour mattered deeply in such a world. A god's domain was not simply property, it was identity. To challenge a divine claim could therefore become something more dangerous than competition. It could become humiliation, and Greek myth remembers humiliation for a very long time. The sea below you continues moving through the darkness. Wave after wave reaches the shore, withdraws and returns. Athena's olive trees rustle above the plain. Two sounds, two powers, neither disappears, and as the first pale light begins to touch the eastern horizon, you leave the future city behind and travel backward toward an older age. When Olympus itself was still young, and Poseidon had only recently learned what portion of the universe would belong to him, there, among the ruins of the Titan's world, the first shadow of this rivalry waits. Before Athena can become Poseidon's rival, you must enter a world in which Poseidon has already fought for the right to rule. You move farther backward through myth, beyond the first settlements of Attica, beyond the olive groves and harbours, into an age when the boundaries of the cosmos are still uncertain. Mountains rise beneath enormous skies, seas stretch into darkness without familiar names. The gods themselves belong to generations locked in struggles over succession, inheritance, and fear. At the centre of this older world stands Cronus. You find him ruling the Titans beneath the shadow of a prophecy. He has overthrown his own father, Uranus, and gained power through violence, yet victory has not brought peace. A warning follows him: one of his own children will someday overthrow him. For ancient listeners, such a prophecy would carry a familiar truth. Power does not silence fear. Sometimes it deepens it. Cronus tries to escape destiny by swallowing his children as they are born. Hestia disappears, Demeter follows, Hera, Hades, then Poseidon. You can imagine the sea god before he possesses a sea, trapped within the strange darkness of his father's body in the familiar poetic version of the myth. Ancient traditions sometimes differ in their details, and another account tells of Poseidon being hidden and saved. Myth rarely behaves like a single historical record. Different communities preserve different memories, yet one element remains important. Poseidon belongs to a family shaped by fear before it is shaped by rule. Zeus escapes Cronus through the intervention of Rhea. Hidden away, he grows until the old prophecy begins to fulfill itself. Cronus is forced to release the children he swallowed, and Poseidon emerges into a universe already preparing for war. The Titanomachy follows, for 10 mythic years. The younger gods struggle against the Titans. You hear the world as ancient poets imagined it: mountains trembling, divine voices rolling through the air, enormous stones crashing across the battlefield. The sky seems to burn. The earth groans beneath immortal feet. Poseidon fights beside Zeus and Hades. From the Cyclopes comes a gift that will define him: the trident. You see it for the first time in his hands, 3 points catching the light of distant fire. It is more than a weapon. It becomes an emblem of authority. With it, Poseidon can strike the ground and bring forth water. He can shatter rock. Later imagination connects him with earthquakes so deeply that Greeks know him as the Earthshaker. The Titans fall, the old order ends, and then comes a quieter moment that may matter even more. The brothers divide the cosmos. Ancient poetry tells you that Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades cast lots for their realms. Zeus receives the sky, Poseidon receives the sea, Hades receives the underworld, the earth and Olympus remain shared. For a moment, consider what this means for Poseidon. The sea is vast. Under starlight it appears almost endless. It touches islands, harbours, cliffs, river mouths, and distant lands, ships carrying grain, bronze, wine, pottery, soldiers, colonists, and pilgrims must cross it. A sailor may trust his skill. But beyond the harbour wall he enters Poseidon's realm. It is a magnificent inheritance. Yet Zeus receives heaven. The eldest traditions do not always agree neatly about divine birth order or how every detail of authority developed, and historians continue to debate how early Greek religion evolved before the surviving literary accounts took shape. But within the mythology familiar to later Greeks, Zeus becomes king of gods and men. Poseidon is immensely powerful. He is not supreme. That distinction matters. You can imagine the brothers standing upon Olympus after the division. Clouds moving beneath the peaks, distant lightning illuminating valleys below. Zeus has the thunderbolt. Poseidon holds the trident. Hades soon withdraws toward the silent kingdom beneath the earth. No battle follows, but the structure of Olympus has been established. Poseidon will live beneath the authority of his brother. The sea god does not become a submissive figure. Later myths remember him challenging decisions, competing for territory, defending his honor, and sometimes joining disputes against Zeus himself. His personality reflects the element he governs. Calm can become fury. Generosity can become destruction. A promise remembered becomes a blessing. An insult remembered becomes a storm. Perhaps ancient audiences saw no contradiction. The sea behaves the same way. On a warm morning, you can stand beside a Greek harbour and hear ropes creaking gently against wooden masts. The water smells of salt and fish. Sunlight trembles across the surface. By evening, clouds can gather over the horizon and turn that same water into something terrifying. Poseidon carries both possibilities, and somewhere within the stories of the early divine order lies a warning. Territories may be divided, but honour cannot be measured so easily. The lots gave Poseidon the sea, yet the earth remained shared. Cities would rise upon that shared earth. Their people would choose divine patrons. Sanctuaries would gather wealth and prestige. Festivals would preserve the names of gods for generations. Who, then, had the right to claim a city? No cosmic division had settled that question. The uncertainty waits quietly beneath the myths. You pass now through Poseidon's imagined palace beneath the waves. Later poets describe a magnificent dwelling in the depths near Aegae, where immortal horses wait with golden manes and bronze hooves. You picture blue-green darkness outside the palace walls, schools of fish turning through shafts of light, and the muffled pulse of waves far above. Poseidon has a kingdom. He has power. He has survived Cronus, fought Titans, and received a divine weapon from the Cyclops. Why should he fear anyone? Then far above the sea, an omen disturbs Olympus. Zeus has received a prophecy concerning Metis, a goddess associated with wisdom and cunning intelligence. She may bear children of extraordinary power. One child, the warning suggests, could threaten the established order. It is the old fear again. Uranus feared succession. Cronus feared succession. Now Zeus hears the same whisper of destiny. The cycle has returned, and from Zeus's attempt to prevent the prophecy will come someone Poseidon has never encountered before. Not a Titan, not a monster, not a rival brother, a daughter of Zeus, born in a way no Olympian will forget. You can almost hear the first strange pain beginning behind the king of the gods' brow. as Olympus falls silent around him. Poseidon does not yet know her name, but soon he will. Athena is coming. The pain begins inside the head of Zeus. You are high upon Olympus now, far above the blue distances of the Aegean, where the air is thin and cold and clouds drift beneath the mountain peaks. Dawn has not yet fully broken. Sacred fires glow outside divine halls, and the first light touches columns that later imagination will make brighter than mortal marble. Somewhere below, hidden behind layers of mist, Poseidon's sea stretches toward the horizon, but Olympus is uneasy. Zeus, ruler of gods and men, is suffering. To understand why, you must return briefly to the prophecy that followed Metis. She is no ordinary goddess. Her name carries the idea of cunning intelligence, practical wisdom, the kind of thought that finds a path through danger rather than simply overpowering it. Some ancient traditions remember her as the first wife of Zeus. Then comes the warning. Metis will bear extraordinary children. A daughter will possess immense wisdom and strength. After her, according to the prophecy preserved in Hesiodic tradition, a son might arise powerful enough to challenge Zeus himself. You have heard this fear before. Cronus swallowed his children because he feared replacement. Zeus escaped and fulfilled the prophecy. Now the victorious son stands where his father once stood, listening to destiny whisper the same possibility. The callback is almost impossible to miss. Power has changed hands. Fear has not. Zeus responds with cunning rather than chains. He swallows Metis while she is pregnant, absorbing the threat into himself. Perhaps he believes the cycle has been broken. Yet destiny in Greek myth rarely disappears because someone attempts to imprison it. Time passes, then comes the pain. You imagine Zeus seated within the halls of Olympus as a pressure begins behind his eyes. At first it may be little more than discomfort, then it intensifies. The air seems charged. Immortals gather at a distance. Something is happening that even the gods do not completely understand. Ancient traditions differ over who finally helps Zeus. In one famous version, Hephaestus splits open his head with an axe. Other accounts give the role to Prometheus or another divine figure. The variations remind you that these stories travelled for centuries before and alongside the surviving texts. Who first imagined this extraordinary birth? No one can know, but you can imagine the moment. The axe rises, a divine blow falls, and Athena emerges. She does not appear as an infant. She comes forth fully grown, armed for battle. Bronze flashes beneath the open sky. A helmet crowns her head. A spear rests in her hand. Her shield gleams beside her. Ancient poetry describes the event with cosmic force, as though earth and sea themselves respond to her arrival. For Poseidon, that detail matters. The sea trembles at the birth of Athena. You stand beside him at the edge of Olympus in imagination, looking toward this new goddess. Poseidon has fought titans. He has watched Zeus claim kingship. He knows what it means when a new divine power enters the family. Yet Athena is unusual. She is the daughter of Zeus, but she has also emerged directly from Zeus himself. The wisdom of Metis lives within the circumstances of her birth. Athena arrives already equipped with the qualities that will define her intelligence: controlled warfare, skill, authority, and a closeness to Zeus that few Olympians can equal. Perhaps Poseidon feels no hatred yet. The surviving myths do not give you a scene in which he looks upon newborn Athena and immediately decides she is his enemy. To claim that would make the story simpler than the evidence allows. Instead, you can sense the possibility of something quieter: recognition. A new force has entered Olympus. Poseidon's strength is ancient, physical, elemental. When he strikes with his trident, rock breaks. When his anger reaches the sea, ships disappear beneath waves. When he shakes the earth, walls and temples can fall. Athena represents another kind of strength. She waits. She calculates. She chooses the moment. The distinction will eventually become crucial. You follow Athena away from the astonishment of her birth and into the developing world of Olympian relationships, she becomes associated with the spear and shield. Yet she differs sharply from Ares, whose warfare often represents fury, bloodshed, and uncontrolled violence. Athena favors strategy, disciplined courage, and the intelligence behind victory. Her influence reaches far beyond battle. You hear the rhythmic sound of a loom, threads pass beneath skilled fingers. Cloth grows slowly from careful repetition. Athena becomes associated with weaving, craftsmanship, and the transformation of raw material into useful form. The same mind that arranges soldiers upon a battlefield can arrange threads into patterns or guide builders toward ordered structures. For the Greeks, these associations belong together more naturally than they might seem. Civilization requires skill. A city survives because someone knows how to build walls, shape timber, produce oil, organize defense, maintain laws, and make intelligent choices under pressure. Athena becomes the divine image of that controlled human capacity, and this brings her gradually toward Poseidon's world, because civilization does not remain inland. Ships require timber and craftsmanship. Navigation requires knowledge. Naval warfare requires strategy. Harbors connect cities to the sea. Colonies spread across water. Merchants depend upon both intelligent planning and favorable waves. The domains of Athena and Poseidon are not perfectly separated. Their boundaries touch, and where divine boundaries touch, myth often creates rivalry. Later generations would remember both gods claiming cities. Athena's connections spread across the Greek world. While Poseidon was worshipped in important sanctuaries from coastal Attica to the Isthmus of Corinth and beyond, archaeological remains show how deeply divine worship was woven into political identity and everyday life, though the precise development of individual myths remains difficult to reconstruct. You should not imagine ancient Greeks opening a single book and finding one official version of everything. They inherited landscapes filled with stories. A spring might belong to a god because generations said it did. A strange mark in rock could become the trace of divine action. An old tree might stand at the center of ritual memory, and one day, Athena and Poseidon will both become connected with such signs upon the same rocky hill. For now, however, Athena stands beneath the sky of Olympus. The strange circumstances of her birth have already fulfilled part of the prophecy Zeus tried to control. The daughter has arrived, brilliant and armed, the feared son has not. Poseidon watches another favored child enter the divine order. What does he think? Ancient poetry leaves the silence intact. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps caution, perhaps nothing resembling resentment at all. But somewhere beyond Olympus lies a rugged region of Greece called Attica. Its soil is thin in places, its coastline opens toward the Aegean, its hills catch the hard Mediterranean sun, and wild olives grow beneath skies washed with light. Mortals will gather there, a city will rise, and when the question comes of which god may place a divine name over that city, both Poseidon and Athena will answer before that contest. However, you must understand why these two gods were almost destined to collide, not because one represented good and the other evil. The truth is more interesting. They represented two powers the Greeks could not live without, and beneath the stars, those powers are already moving toward the same shore, before Poseidon and Athena can compete for the same city. You begin to see why simply sharing the same divine world was enough to bring them closer to conflict. You leave Olympus beneath a pale morning sky and descend toward Greece. Mountain ridges appear through silver mist. Valleys open between them, scattered with grazing animals and small settlements. Farther south, the land breaks into long coastlines and rocky peninsulas. Islands rise from the Aegean like dark stones scattered across blue glass. Almost everywhere you look, the presence of Poseidon and Athena can be imagined together. You begin at the shore. A wooden ship waits beside a primitive harbour, its hull smelling of pine resin and seawater. Sailors pull ropes across rough palms. Amphorae of wine and olive oil are carried aboard. The morning is calm, but the men know how quickly calm can disappear. Before sailing, they may offer something to the gods. Poseidon must be respected. Beyond the protection of the harbour wall, human confidence becomes fragile. A storm can tear a sail apart. A hidden reef can open a hull. An earthquake beneath the sea can transform the coastline itself. To ancient Greeks, these forces were not merely mechanical events unfolding in an indifferent universe. They belonged to a world alive with divine presence. Poseidon embodies that uncertainty. Yet look more carefully at the ship. Someone designed it. Someone measured timber, shaped planks, twisted rope, organized rowers, studied currents, remembered stars, and learned how a vessel should behave beneath changing winds. Here you approach Athena. The sea belongs to Poseidon. The skill that helps you cross it belongs to the kind of intelligence Athena represents. Already, the boundary becomes unclear. You travel inland. In a workshop. Bronze glows beside a charcoal fire. The air is warm and metallic. A craftsman strikes heated material. Each blow controlled rather than wild. Nearby, women work at looms, fingers guiding wool into patterns learned across generations. Athena belongs comfortably here. She is associated with craft, disciplined labour, practical knowledge, and the transformation of disorder into form. Poseidon seems farther away. Then the ground trembles. A clay cup moves slightly upon a wooden table. Dust falls from a wall. The craftsman stops. For only a few heartbeats. The earth shifts beneath your feet, and the illusion of permanence vanishes. Poseidon has returned. The Greeks knew him not only as Lord of the Sea, but as the Earthshaker. The connection may seem unusual until you inhabit a landscape shaped by earthquakes, cliffs, springs, and coastlines where land and water constantly meet. Even far from the waves, Poseidon could be near, and Athena, too, could appear far beyond city walls. She guides heroes through wilderness. She advises warriors. She protects favoured mortals when intelligence must overcome overwhelming force. Neither god fits inside a simple boundary. That may be part of the problem. Their differences become especially clear when you consider how each uses power. Imagine Poseidon angered. Clouds gather over the Aegean. The wind sharpens. Waves rise and strike a ship broadside. Oars vanish beneath foam. Sailors shout into a storm that does not care how carefully their voyage was planned. Poseidon's power can overwhelm preparation. Now imagine Athena facing danger. She rarely needs to break the world. She changes the decision. She places an idea into a hero's mind. She alters the arrangement of a battle. She encourages patience when anger would destroy everything. Her miracles can be dramatic, but her deepest power often works through judgment. Poseidon commands what humans fear they cannot control. Athena represents the hope that intelligence can still create order within that uncertainty. For ancient audiences, neither principle was unnecessary. You need the sea. You also need the ship. You need the wild strength of horses, another creature deeply connected with Poseidon. You also need the skill to harness them. You need courage. You also need judgment. The rivalry between these gods therefore carries a symbolic depth that later generations have often noticed. Some modern interpretations see their contest as a tension between natural power and organized civilization. Others caution that such neat oppositions can oversimplify traditions that developed across different places and centuries. The ancient worshippers themselves did not necessarily choose between these forces in everyday life. A sailor from Athens could honor Athena as protector of his city and still sacrifice to Poseidon before crossing dangerous water. Divine loyalty was rarely exclusive, but myth thrives where necessary powers compete. As evening arrives, you walk along a cliff overlooking the sea. The stone beneath your sandals still holds the warmth of the day. Time grows between cracks. The scent rises whenever your feet disturb it. Below, waves strike the rocks. Above, the first stars appear. Then you notice something unusual. 3 seabirds circle the cliff. They turn once, twice, 3 times. Then suddenly they fly inland. A fisherman nearby watches them disappear toward the hills. Perhaps he considers the movement an omen. Ancient Greeks paid attention to birds, dreams, thunder, unusual weather, and unexpected events, especially when important decisions approached. What does the sign mean? No one can know. But inland lies Attica, and the birds have flown toward it. You follow. The landscape gradually becomes dry and rugged. Olive trees cling to pale soil. Goats move across slopes. Springs become precious. From higher ground, the sea remains visible in the distance, bright beneath the sun. This is not yet the Athens of classical history. Archaeology reveals settlement on and around the Acropolis long before the great temples of the 5th century BC. Yet connecting physical remains directly to specific mythological episodes is difficult, and historians continue to debate how stories of divine competition developed alongside local political and religious identity. Still, you can understand why this landscape invited sacred stories. A high limestone rock dominates the plain. Water matters here. Agriculture matters. Access to the sea matters. Defense matters. Everything Poseidon and Athena represent can meet within one small region. As you approach the hill, another old pattern begins to emerge. The gods do not only govern elements and activities, they claim places across the Greek world. Communities identify themselves with particular divine protectors. Temples rise, festivals develop. Local stories explain why one god holds special authority over a city or region. To become patron of an important community is to receive more than affection. Your name enters civic memory. Generations bring sacrifices to your altar. Processions move through streets in your honor. Children learn your myths. Victories are attributed to your protection. A city can become a monument to divine prestige. Poseidon, who once watched Zeus receive the sky and kingship, understands the meaning of territory. Athena, born directly from Zeus and increasingly associated with civic order, is equally suited to become the guardian of a city. The warning hidden within their differences now becomes clearer. One can endure disagreement while nothing important is at stake. But what happens when both gods desire the same land? You reach the Attic plain after sunset. Ahead, the future Acropolis rises beneath moonlight. A shepherd has left a small fire burning near his animals. Smoke drifts through the cool air. Somewhere among the rocks, water moves softly through a spring. Then the shepherd hears something. A deep sound, not thunder, not quite an earthquake. It seems to come from beneath the earth and beyond the coast at the same time. His animals lift their heads. Far away, the sea darkens. The old warning has begun to take shape. Attica is waiting for a patron, and Poseidon has noticed it. You arrive in Attica before sunrise, when the hills are still dark and the sea is only a pale line beneath the eastern sky. The land feels quieter than Olympus. There are no halls of immortals here, no thunderbolts resting beside divine thrones. Instead, you hear goats shifting behind rough fences, insects moving through dry grass, and the distant murmur of waves. Smoke rises from small settlements where families wake beside hearths that have burned low through the night. This is the land that will become inseparable from Athena. But she does not possess it yet, nor does Poseidon. The Attica of myth is a landscape waiting for identity. Ancient storytellers imagined early kings ruling communities long before the historical city of Athens reached its classical greatness. Archaeology tells a more complicated story of human occupation stretching deep into prehistory, with the Acropolis serving as a significant fortified and inhabited place across changing ages. Myth remembers something different. It remembers a choice. You walk toward the limestone height that will become the sacred center of Athens. Morning light touches its cliffs. The stone is rough beneath your hand, warmed gradually by the rising sun. Around it lie patches of cultivated ground, grazing animals, scattered houses, and paths connecting communities across the plain. Water is precious. Rain comes unevenly. Summers can be dry. Springs and wells become places around which life gathers. Every household understands the value of fresh water before anyone needs to explain it. Olives matter too. Their twisted trunks seem almost ancient even when young. Their narrow leaves flash silver when the wind turns them. Olive oil can illuminate a room, flavour food, preserve ingredients, cleanse the body, enter ritual practice, and become something exchanged beyond the boundaries of the community. And beyond the plain waits the sea. It promises trade. It promises fish. It promises connection with islands and distant shores. It also promises storms. Attica, therefore, lies between two necessities, the earth that must be cultivated and the water that cannot be controlled. Perhaps this is why the later myth feels so perfectly rooted here. Poseidon and Athena do not compete for an arbitrary piece of land. They compete for a place that seems to require them both. You enter one of the early settlements imagined by later tradition. Clay vessels stand beside a doorway. Bread cooks near a hearth, filling the air with the smell of grain and smoke. A woman pours olive oil into a shallow lamp. Outside, an older man examines the sky before deciding whether conditions are suitable for work. These people live close to uncertainty. A failed harvest matters. A damaged boat matters. A sudden illness, a dry spring, or a violent storm can alter the future of a household. The gods are not distant philosophical concepts in such a world. They are woven into survival. Before a journey you pray. Before planting you make an offering. At birth, marriage, death, war, and harvest. Ritual gives structure to what cannot be fully controlled, and when something strange occurs, you pay attention. On this morning, something strange has occurred. Near the rocky hill, a spring has changed. A shepherd kneels beside it and touches the water. He brings his fingers to his lips, then frowns. Perhaps this belongs to no surviving ancient version exactly as you imagine it. But stories grow around signs, and signs become meaningful because people remember them. The shepherd tastes salt. He looks toward the sea. It lies far enough away that seawater should not be here. Then the ground gives a faint tremor. A cup falls inside a nearby house. Dogs begin barking. No wall collapses, no cliff breaks. The movement lasts only a moment, but everyone has felt it. The Earthshaker has many ways of announcing himself. That night an elder dreams. In the dream, he stands upon the high rock while the plain below him disappears beneath dark water. A horse emerges from the waves, enormous and white, its mane streaming like foam. It climbs the hill without slipping. At the summit the horse stops. Then an olive branch appears between its teeth. The elder reaches for it. Before his fingers touch the leaves, he wakes. What does the dream mean? Ancient Greeks might seek interpretation through ritual specialists, seers, family traditions, or sanctuaries, depending on time and place. Dreams could be dismissed, feared, or treated as divine communication. This dream is remembered, not because anyone understands it, because no one does. Meanwhile, stories begin to form around the question of who will protect the land. Later accounts attach the contest to the reign of Cecrops, a mysterious early king of Athens. He is often imagined as autochthonous, born from the earth itself, and represented with a human upper body and serpentine lower form. To ancient Athenians, autochthony carried enormous symbolic weight. It meant belonging to the land, not merely living upon it, emerging from it. You imagine Cecrops looking across Attica from the high rock. Mountain ridges frame the horizon. The sea shines beyond the plain. He understands that a community needs more than walls and houses. It needs sacred order. And the gods have begun to notice. Poseidon comes first in many retellings. You do not yet see him. You sense him. Along the coast, fishermen notice an unusual stillness upon the water. The wind dies. Sails hang loose from their masts. Even the gulls become quiet. Then, beyond the harbour, a line appears across the sea. It moves towards shore. Not a storm. Not exactly. The surface seems to rise beneath something unseen. Far inland, horses become restless. Hooves strike packed earth. One animal pulls against its rope until a handler struggles to calm it. The people exchange worried glances. Poseidon is lord of horses as well as seas and earthquakes. though the origins and development of that association remain subjects of interpretation. Some researchers have connected it to very ancient layers of Greek religion, reaching back toward the Mycenaean world, where forms of Poseidon's name appear in Linear B records. His importance may be older than many familiar stories about him. That makes what is approaching feel deeper than a simple contest. Poseidon does not arrive as an outsider asking permission. He comes as a god who already believes the landscape belongs naturally within his power. Water surrounds Greece. Earthquakes shake it. Horses carry warriors and prestige. Why should this rising community choose anyone else? Yet high above, another pair of divine eyes watches Attica. Athena sees the same dry soil, the same rocky hill, the same people, but where Poseidon sees a place to claim. Perhaps Athena sees something that can be shaped, a city not yet completed, a future waiting to be organized. The distinction is subtle. Soon it will become everything. Night returns to Attica. Torches flicker beside the settlement. The scent of roasted grain and olive wood drifts through the darkness. On the hill, Cecrops looks toward the sea. Lightning flashes far beyond the horizon. There is no thunder. Then, from somewhere among the rocks behind him, an owl calls once. Cecrops turns. Nothing is there. Below him, the salt-tasting spring reflects the stars. The dream of the white horse and olive branch remains unexplained. Two signs, two divine powers, one land, and as the moon rises above the future Acropolis, you can almost feel the first heavy footsteps of the sea god approaching the hill. Poseidon has come to make his claim. The morning arrives beneath a sky so clear that the distant sea appears almost motionless. You stand upon the rocky height beside Cecrops and the people of Attica. The limestone beneath your feet is pale and uneven, broken by narrow cracks where stubborn grasses grow. Warm wind moves across the hill carrying time, dust, smoke, and the faint taste of salt from the coast. Everyone is waiting. The strange signs of recent days have unsettled the settlements. The trembling ground, the restless horses, the mysterious water. The elders dream of the white horse carrying an olive branch. None has provided an answer. Then the sea changes. Far beyond the plain, a dark band forms across the water. There are no storm clouds above it. Fishermen along the coast stop repairing their nets. Sailors standing beside wooden boats look toward the horizon. Birds rise suddenly from the rocks and turn inland. The dark band moves closer, and with it comes a sound. At first, you might mistake it for distant thunder, yet the sky remains blue. The sound deepens until it resembles waves breaking inside a cavern beneath the earth. The people on the hill fall silent. Poseidon is coming. Ancient artists would eventually give him the powerful body of a mature bearded god, often holding the unmistakable trident. You imagine him now not simply walking from the sea, but carrying its presence with him. His hair is dark with spray. His robes move in the wind. The bronze points of his trident catch the morning sun. Behind him, the horizon seems darker. The Earthshaker climbs toward the summit. No one blocks his path. Cecrops waits. Poseidon reaches the high rock and looks across Attica. From here, you understand what he sees. To the east lies the Aegean, gateway toward islands and distant coasts. Around the hill stretches a landscape capable of supporting communities but never offering effortless abundance. Mountains protect and confine the plain. The sea opens it toward the wider world. Poseidon knows what that future could become. A city with ships, a city with harbours, a city whose wealth may travel across his waters. Perhaps he considers his claim obvious. Later storytellers would say the gods sought possession of cities throughout Greece. The details vary greatly, and you should resist imagining one organised competition occurring everywhere according to fixed rules. These myths likely preserved local religious identities, rival cult traditions, political memories, and explanations for sacred landscapes. But within the story, Poseidon wants Attica. He raises the trident. For a moment, everything becomes still. Then he strikes. The sound rolls across the hill. Stone trembles beneath your feet. birds scatter from the slopes. Somewhere below, horses cry out. Dust rises around the point where the weapon has met the earth, and from the broken rock comes water. People move closer. A spring has appeared where there was dry stone. Imagine the wonder. In a landscape where fresh water is precious, a god has opened the earth itself. The surface shivers beneath the sunlight. Someone kneels. Another reaches down with a clay cup. Then comes the surprise. The water is salty. Poseidon's sea has entered the hill. Later traditions often describe this sign as a saltwater spring, sometimes called the Sea of Erechtheus, while other accounts emphasize Poseidon's creation or gift of the horse. The versions do not fit perfectly together. Historians continue to debate how these traditions developed and whether originally separate stories were eventually combined. The uncertainty makes the scene richer. Perhaps you see water. Perhaps an ancient storyteller somewhere else asks you to imagine a horse. If the horse is Poseidon's gift, it is magnificent. You hear hooves upon stone. A powerful animal appears, neck arched, muscles shifting beneath its skin, mane lifting in the wind. Horses mean movement, prestige, warfare, wealth, to a society in which owning and maintaining them can signal status. Such a gift is hardly trivial. Poseidon offers power, whether through water or horse. His message is similar. Choose me, and you will possess something formidable. The people look toward Cecrops. The king says nothing. That silence matters. Poseidon has demonstrated divine authority, but the contest is not yet decided. And perhaps this is the first moment when irritation enters the god's expression. He has broken stone. He has produced a miracle. Why is anyone still waiting? You remember the earlier division of the cosmos. Poseidon once stood beside Zeus and Hades while realms were assigned among them. He received the sea through divine lot, without needing mortals to judge whether his gift was useful enough. Here the situation is different. Mortals may have a voice. The possibility itself could wound divine pride. Poseidon turns toward the people. No surviving source gives you the exact words he might have spoken here, and some versions place the judgment in the hands of gods rather than human inhabitants. But you can imagine the promise carried by his presence. The sea will connect this land with the world. Ships will leave its shores. Horses will carry its warriors. Its enemies will fear the god who shakes the earth. Yet the salty spring contains an ambiguity. Is it a blessing or a warning? The elder who dreamed of the white horse remembers the olive branch between its teeth. The first half of his dream now seems to have come true. Where is the branch? As afternoon fades, people remain gathered near Poseidon's sign. Children approach the water cautiously. Older men discuss what they have witnessed. Women carry the story down toward the houses, and by evening the miracle has already begun becoming memory. Poseidon does not leave. He waits. Clouds gather far offshore, not threatening yet, just present. Then another sign appears. A bird crosses the evening sky. An owl. It settles upon a rock near the summit and remains perfectly still. Poseidon looks toward it. The people follow his gaze. The owl turns its head toward the ground. There, beside a patch of bare earth, a faint green shoot seems to push between stones. Perhaps it was already there. Perhaps someone only notices it now. Perhaps myth has begun before anyone understands what they're seeing. The wind changes. The scent of the sea weakens. For the first time that day, you smell something softer carried across the hill, crushed leaves and warm soil. Poseidon's fingers tighten around the shaft of his trident. He knows this sign. Someone else has arrived. You look toward the upper path as evening light turns the rocks gold. There is no thunder, no earthquake, no wall of water, only the measured sound of footsteps. Athena is climbing the Acropolis, and Poseidon, standing beside the miracle he believes should have secured his victory, must now watch his rival offer something of her own. Athena climbs the hill without the violence that announced Poseidon. You hear no thunder beneath the earth. No wave rises against the distant coast. No frightened horses pull against their ropes. Instead, the evening wind passes through the dry grasses. carrying the scent of warm stone and wood smoke from the settlements below. Poseidon waits beside the spring his trident has opened. Athena approaches. You see bronze beneath the fading sunlight. Her helmet rests upon her head, and the long spear in her hand identifies her as unmistakably as Poseidon's trident identifies him. Yet she does not raise the weapon. She looks first at the land. Perhaps that is important. Around you stretches Attica pale soil, low vegetation, distant mountains, scattered farms, and beyond everything, the shining sea. The people who live here have already seen what Poseidon can offer. They have touched his miracle. Some have tasted the salt water. In traditions where his gift is the horse, they have seen strength and speed standing before them. Athena must answer. Poseidon watches her. There is still no reason for him to believe he will lose. He is older in the Olympian order. He fought against the Titans. He rules an element that surrounds the Greek world. His trident can shake the foundations beneath Athena's feet. Yet Athena does not challenge force with greater force. She kneels. Her fingers touch the soil. Then she plants something. Ancient storytellers would remember the moment as the gift of the olive tree. You watch the earth around Athena's hand darken. A small shoot appears. Leaves unfold from a slender stem. Branches extend upward as though seasons are passing within moments. The people draw closer. Before them stands an olive. Its trunk is young, but its leaves already carry the familiar silver-green colour that will someday cover the hills of Attica. Nothing about it seems terrifying. That is precisely why its power is easy to underestimate. You hear leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Athena rises. Poseidon looks at the tree. Perhaps he almost smiles. This is the answer to his trident. A tree. But the people of Attica understand something a god of storms might overlook. They know what an olive means. You imagine one of the women approaching the branches. Her fingers touch a leaf. The surface is smooth, the underside pale. She knows the labour required before olives become useful. Fruit must be harvested, crushed, pressed. The tree itself requires patience. But once established, it can endure. Its oil can burn in lamps during long nights. It can enter food and ritual. It can be rubbed across skin. Wood can be used for objects and fuel. The fruit can feed households, while oil can become part of wider networks of exchange. The gift is not spectacular because it destroys something. It is spectacular because it continues giving. Poseidon's spring demonstrates what a god can do. Athena's olive suggests what mortals might become. That distinction settles quietly over the hill. The elder who dreamed of the white horse suddenly remembers the branch between its teeth. His hands begin to tremble. The omen has completed itself. Horse and olive, Poseidon and Athena. But what did the dream predict? Victory, reconciliation, disaster. No one can yet know. The uncertainty remains. Later, Athenians would preserve a sacred olive on the Acropolis. And ancient literary traditions connected it directly with Athena's contest for the land. Accounts even remembered the tree surviving destruction, or rapidly producing a new shoot after catastrophe, strengthening its meaning as a symbol of endurance. How much of this tradition reaches back to the earlier stages of the myth is impossible to establish with certainty. Yet the olive's significance in Greek life is not mythical invention. You can walk through the ancient landscape in imagination and understand its value everywhere. At dusk, lamps begin glowing in houses below. Oil feeds their flames. At a shrine, someone pours oil as part of ritual practice. In a household, food is prepared with it. Athena has offered something woven into daily life. And perhaps Poseidon begins to understand the danger. His gift promises magnificence. Athena's gift promises usefulness. The competition has shifted. Poseidon steps toward the tree. For a heartbeat, people become tense. You know what his trident could do. One blow might tear the roots from the earth. One earthquake might split the hill. But he does nothing. Not yet. The contest requires judgment. Here the surviving traditions become uncertain. In one version, Cecrops acts as witness to Athena's planting. In others, The gods decide between the claimants. Another famous tradition associates the vote with the men and women of Athens, with the women favouring Athena and the men favouring Poseidon. Athena winning by a single vote. That story leads into its own explanation of later social customs and divine punishment. Which version came first? The ancient world gives you no simple answer. Oral tradition does not preserve stories like stone preserves an inscription. Stories move. Communities reshape them. Ritual and politics can alter emphasis across generations. What remains constant is the result. Someone must choose. Athena and Poseidon cannot both be sole patron of the same land. Night descends while the decision is delayed. Sacred fires burn upon the hill. The people gather around them, voices low. The smell of roasting meat mixes with olive wood smoke. Somewhere a child begins crying and is carried away toward the settlement. Poseidon stands near the saltwater spring. Athena remains near her tree. You are between them. On one side, water reflects the stars. On the other, silver leaves move beneath moonlight. Two gifts, two futures. The sea god looks toward the coast. Clouds have gathered beyond the horizon. You see occasional flashes of distant lightning illuminating their edges. The storm remains far away, but Poseidon knows it is there. Athena reaches toward the olive and touches one branch. She does not look triumphant. Not yet. Perhaps wisdom understands something pride does not. Winning a divine contest can create an enemy more dangerous than losing it. The people of Attica prepare to judge, and before dawn, an old seer among them speaks a warning. Choose carefully. The god who receives the city will protect it. The god who loses may never forget. No one speaks after that. The sacred fire crackles. Salt water moves softly inside the rock, above it. The olive leaves continue whispering beneath the stars. By tomorrow, one of these gods will have won Athens, and the other will begin to hate what that victory represents. The night passes slowly upon the hill. You remain beneath the open sky with the people of Attica, watching the small flames of sacred fires move in the darkness. The stars above seem endless. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a pale river, while below, the sea reflects scattered points of light. No one sleeps deeply. A decision is approaching. For the people gathered here, this is not simply a contest between two powerful beings in the ancient Greek imagination. A city without divine protection exists in uncertainty. The gods influence harvests, voyages, battles, family fortunes, and the invisible order that holds society together. To choose a patron is to choose a relationship with the divine, and every relationship carries responsibility. You look again at the two gifts before you. The spring of Poseidon remains beside the rock. Its water glimmers under torchlight. The taste of salt reminds everyone of the sea surrounding Greece. It speaks of adventure, danger, wealth, and power. The olive tree of Athena stands quietly nearby. Its leaves move with every breath of wind. It does not roar. It does not shake the earth. It simply exists. Yet the longer you look at it, the more its meaning expands. The people begin their judgment at dawn. Ancient traditions preserve several versions of this moment, and that uncertainty is part of what makes the myth endure. Some accounts describe the decision being made by Cecrops or by divine judges. Another famous tradition tells of a vote among the inhabitants of Attica. These versions reflect different attempts to explain why Athens belonged especially to Athena, while still preserving Poseidon's importance. The exact historical origin of the story remains uncertain, but the symbolic meaning is clear. A city must decide what kind of future it desires. As the sun rises over Attica, the people gather. You hear footsteps across stone. You smell fresh bread, olive oil, and smoke from morning fires. Farmers arrive from the countryside, shepherds descend from the hills, fishermen leave the shoreline and climb toward the sacred height. Their clothing carries the dust of the roads and the scent of the sea. They have seen both miracles. They understand both gifts. Poseidon watches from beside the spring. Perhaps he believes the decision is already made. Look at what he is offered. A horse, or water, or the power of the sea itself. These are not small things. The horse represents strength and movement. Warriors ride into battle upon horses. Kings display them as symbols of prestige. Chariots carry heroes through ancient stories. A city connected with such power would possess an impressive ally. The sea is even greater. Aegean waters surround the Greek world. Whoever understands the sea can reach distant islands, trade with foreign lands, and project influence beyond nearby valleys. Poseidon represents expansion. He represents force. Then the people turn toward Athena. Her olive tree stands beneath the morning light. The first rays touch its leaves, making them appear almost silver. Athena's gift is different. It asks for patience. An olive tree does not become valuable in a single day. It grows slowly. It requires care. It survives through difficult seasons. It becomes part of the landscape rather than simply dominating it. Perhaps that is why the people are moved. The city they hope to build will not exist only through conquest. It will require farmers, craftsmen, builders, merchants, and thinkers. It will require memory. It will require wisdom. The decision is made. Athena wins. The city will carry her name, Athens. For a moment, the hill is silent. Then the people celebrate. Torches rise. Voices fill the air. The olive tree becomes a symbol of divine favor. Offerings are prepared. Stories begin immediately forming around what has happened. Because every great event becomes legend the moment people begin repeating it. Athena has gained a city. But look toward Poseidon. The sea god does not experience this as a simple loss. To mortals, the contest may appear finished. To a god, honor has been wounded. You remember the earlier world of Olympus? Poseidon was not a powerless figure seeking attention. He was one of the three brothers who divided the cosmos after defeating the Titans. He held a realm older than many human kingdoms. His voice could command waves and storms. Now mortals have chosen another. And the chosen god is not merely another deity. She is the daughter of Zeus, the daughter whose birth transformed Olympus, the daughter whose wisdom came from the very intelligence Zeus feared enough to absorb. Ancient audiences understood the emotional weight of honor and insult. A god's favor was not only about receiving prayers, it was connected with recognition. To ignore a god could invite disaster. The warning spoken beside the sacred fire returns. The god who loses may never forget. Dark clouds begin gathering above the western mountains. The weather changes quickly. A cold wind crosses the hill. The olive leaves turn their pale undersides toward the sky. Below, waves grow louder against the shore. No storm reaches the city yet, but everyone notices. A priest looks toward the sea. An old woman quietly lowers her head. She remembers the saltwater spring. She remembers the Earthshaker's arrival. Was this simply changing weather, or a divine sign? Ancient Greeks often searched for meaning in such moments. A sudden storm after an important decision could become part of a larger story. A strange coincidence could become an omen remembered for generations. The answer remains unknown, but the myth has already chosen its path. Athena has gained Athens, Poseidon has lost it, and his response will reveal the most dangerous aspect of his character, not his strength. Not his storms, his pride. You follow him as he leaves the hill. The sea welcomes him back. Waves rise around his path, the sky darkens above the horizon. Far below the surface, his palace waits among shadows and moving currents. The trident remains in his hand. The defeat remains in his memory. And as the people of Athens celebrate their new protector beneath the olive tree, Poseidon looks back one final time. The city has chosen wisdom over the sea. But the sea remembers everything. The celebration on the hill does not last forever. For the people of Attica, the choice has been made. Fires burn through the night. Songs rise beneath the stars. The name of Athena begins travelling from one settlement to another. The olive tree becomes a living reminder that the city has received the protection of a goddess who promises order, skill, and endurance. But far from the voices of mortals, another sound grows louder. The sea. You follow Poseidon away from Athens and back toward the coast. The path is silent. The wind that once carried the scent of salt and sunlight now feels colder. Clouds gather above the Aegean. stretching like dark cloth across the horizon. The surface of the water changes from bright blue to deep grey. Poseidon walks where land meets sea. Behind him, the waves rise and fall. Before him, the coastline waits. You can imagine what moves within him. The ancient myths often portray Poseidon as a god of enormous emotion. He is not distant like an unmoving force of nature. He can be generous, protective, and helpful. Yet when dishonoured, he can become terrifying. This complexity is important. The Greeks did not imagine their gods as simple symbols. They gave them personalities filled with contradictions because human beings themselves are contradictory. The same power that protects can destroy. The same passion that creates loyalty can become anger. Poseidon embodies that truth. He reaches the shore. The fishermen who see him from a distance pull their boats higher onto the beach. They know the signs. The sea is changing. The first wave strikes the rocks harder than expected. Then another. Then another. The rhythm becomes heavier. You feel the ground beneath your feet. A small tremor passes through the coast. No buildings fall. No lives are lost. But the message is understood. The Earthshaker is unhappy. Later traditions would tell different versions of what followed. Some describe Poseidon sending floods against Attica after losing the contest. Others focus more on his continued presence within the city's sacred traditions, rather than direct punishment. These stories likely developed through different local memories and religious explanations, but the image remains powerful. The defeated sea god turns his anger toward the land that rejected him. You stand upon the shore as the tide rises. The water creeps farther inland. A farmer watching from above sees channels filling with seawater. A fisherman looks toward his damaged nets. Families carry belongings away from low ground. The sea, which had always offered opportunity, now reveals another face. Danger. This was a lesson ancient Greeks understood deeply. Water gave life. Water could take it away. Every harbour existed because people depended upon the sea, and every harbour existed because people feared it. The Greeks built ships because they needed connection. They prayed because they knew connection carried risk. Poseidon's anger reflects that reality, yet there is something more personal within the myth. The contest for Athens was not only about land, it was about recognition. Poseidon had offered a miracle. He believed the value of his gift was obvious. Athena offered something quieter. The people chose her. For a god associated with pride and overwhelming force, the rejection becomes almost unbearable. You return in imagination to the moment beneath the olive tree. Athena did not defeat Poseidon by destroying him. She defeated him by being chosen. That distinction matters. A warrior can survive a wound. A king can survive a lost battle. But humiliation is harder to overcome. Ancient audiences would have recognized this immediately. Honor was central to Greek heroic culture, in epic poetry. Characters often make choices not because they are practical, but because their reputation and dignity are at stake. The gods reflect this human concern. Poseidon remembers, and the city remembers too. The people of Athens cannot simply erase the sea god from their world. Their lives depend upon the waters surrounding them. Their ships must sail. Their fishermen must work. Their merchants must travel. Even after Athena wins, Poseidon remains necessary. Perhaps this is one of the deepest meanings hidden within the myth. A civilization cannot survive by wisdom alone, nor can it survive through force alone. Athens will need both, but the balance will not be easy. As night falls, Poseidon stands before the endless sea. Above him, lightning illuminates distant clouds. He raises the trident. The waters answer. Waves rise higher. Some ancient stories say the god's anger caused the sea to flood parts of Attica. Other interpretations suggest that these myths preserved memories of natural disasters, coastal dangers, or the symbolic fear of losing harmony with a powerful deity. Historians continue to debate how much of Greek myth reflects actual environmental experiences and how much belongs entirely to religious imagination. Perhaps the truth exists somewhere between them. A flood may have inspired a story may have preserved a fear may have become a warning. That is how myths survive. They carry more than events. They carry emotions. You return once more to the hill of Athens. The olive tree stands. The saltwater spring remains. Neither miracle has disappeared. The people now live with both. Athena's gift grows quietly. Poseidon's sign remains beside it. The defeated god has not been removed from the landscape. He has left his mark. And this creates another mystery. Why would the Athenians continue honouring a god who once opposed their chosen protector? Why preserve the memory of the rival instead of allowing victory to erase him? Perhaps because the Greeks understood something about the world. The things we fear are often the things we need to respect. The sea cannot be defeated. Nature cannot be conquered completely. Wisdom does not eliminate danger. It learns how to live beside it. The storm eventually moves away from Attica. Rain falls upon the hills. The flooded fields slowly return to normal. The waves become calmer, but deep beneath the surface, Poseidon's resentment remains. And the people of Athens will soon discover that winning the favour of one god does not mean escaping the attention of another. The olive tree has given the city a future, but the sea has given it a warning. The storm eventually passes. You return to Attica beneath a sky washed clean by rain. The clouds that covered the Aegean have moved away, leaving the mountains sharp against the horizon. The sea is calmer now, though its surface still carries the memory of the violence that came before. The people of Athens look across the landscape they have chosen. The olive tree remains. The saltwater spring remains. And between them stands a city learning a difficult lesson. Victory does not always remove danger. Sometimes it creates a new responsibility. You walk through the early settlement as morning begins. The streets are not yet the grand avenues of later Athens. There are no towering marble temples shining above the city. Instead, you see simple homes, workshops, animal pens, and small shrines where families leave offerings. Smoke rises from household fires. The smell of bread, olive oil, and burning wood fills the air. Life continues, but everyone remembers what happened on the hill. Stories travel quickly. An old fisherman tells younger men how the sea became angry after the judgment. A farmer points toward the olive tree and explains that Athena gave the city more than a plant. An elder warns children never to mock Poseidon, because even a defeated god remains powerful. The lesson becomes part of memory. This is how ancient myths lived. Not only in poems, not only in temples, they lived in conversations beside fires, in songs during festivals, in rituals performed generation after generation. A myth was not simply something people believed happened long ago. It was a way of understanding the present. And the present now contains a delicate problem. Athens belongs to Athena, but Athens cannot survive without Poseidon. The contradiction follows the city everywhere. You travel toward the coastline. The harbour smells of salt, fish, and wet wood. Small vessels rest beside the shore, nets dry in the sun. Sailors prepare for journeys that may last days or weeks. Before leaving, they make offerings to Poseidon. This may seem strange after the contest. Why honour the god who lost? Because the Greeks understood divine relationships differently from simple loyalty. A person could honour Athena for protecting the city and still respect Poseidon because the sea remained beyond human control. The gods were not political rivals in the modern sense. They were forces woven into existence. You could not reject the sea simply because Athena had won a sacred contest. The sea was still there. The waves still rose. Storms still approached. Ships still depended upon Poseidon's favour. Perhaps this explains why the Athenians did not erase Poseidon's memory from their sacred world. They understood something profound. A civilization built beside the sea must never become arrogant toward the sea. The olive tree teaches patience. The ocean teaches humility. Together they shape Athens, yet the rivalry continues beneath the surface. In the years that follow, traditions tell of the city establishing rituals to maintain balance between the competing powers. The details vary, and scholars continue to examine how these religious practices developed over time. Archaeological discoveries on the Acropolis and surrounding areas reveal layers of worship, rebuilding, destruction, and renewal that reflect a long history of changing beliefs. Stone remembers what people fear forgetting. You imagine priests walking across the sacred hill at dawn. Their sandals touch cold marble. They carry offerings. The air smells of incense and olive oil. The sacred fires burn. The city below begins waking. A festival approaches. Athena is celebrated with processions, music, and offerings. Her presence is everywhere. The people carry symbols of the goddess through the streets. Craftsmen display their skill. Young citizens participate in rituals connecting themselves to the identity of the city. Athena has become more than a divine protector. She has become part of Athens itself. But on the edge of the city, near the water, another ritual continues. A sailor places his hand upon the wooden side of his ship. He whispers a prayer. He asks Poseidon for safe passage. Two gods, one city, one destiny. The balance is uneasy. Then comes another sign. During a nighttime ceremony, a priest tending a sacred flame notices something unusual. The fire bends sharply toward the sea. There is no strong wind. The flames continue leaning for several moments before returning upright. The priest says nothing immediately. Ancient traditions placed great importance on unusual natural signs, especially around religious ceremonies. Fire, birds, dreams, storms, and other unexpected events could be interpreted as messages from the divine. Was this a warning, a reminder, or simply a natural movement that later generations transformed into meaning? No one can know, but the story is remembered, and the people become more careful, because the contest for Athens was never only about who won. It was about what happens after victory. A city must live with its choices. Athena's followers must avoid forgetting Poseidon's power. Poseidon's worshippers must accept that Athena's wisdom has shaped the city. Neither side can completely remove the other. You stand once again upon the Acropolis at sunset. The olive leaves glow gold. Below, the sea reflects the fading light. The two signs of the divine contest remain close together. A tree, a spring, one rooted in earth, one connected to the endless waters. The people of Athens may have chosen Athena, but they didn't escape Poseidon. They could not. The sea surrounded them, and perhaps, deep within the myth, this was the lesson the Greeks wanted to preserve. A city is not protected by strength alone. It is not protected by intelligence alone. It survives through understanding the powers greater than itself. The ancient warning returns. Choose carefully. Honor what you cannot control. Remember what defeated powers can still become. Because Poseidon's anger has not vanished. It has only changed form. The god who once demanded the city now waits within its traditions. And one day, another generation of Athenians will discover that old wounds beneath sacred ground do not always disappear. Some remain. Some become legends. Some become part of the very foundation upon which a civilization is built. Time moves forward across Attica. The first anger of Poseidon becomes something quieter, but it never completely disappears. Seasons pass over the land. Olive branches grow longer. Children become adults. Stories once spoken beside fires become traditions repeated during ceremonies. The people of Athens now live beneath the protection of Athena, but beneath the soil, beneath the stones of the sacred hill. The memory of Poseidon remains. You walk through a later age of myth, toward the reign of a legendary king named Erechtheus. The morning mist hangs over the Acropolis. The air is cool. The first rays of sunlight touch the upper stones, and the city below slowly awakens. Farmers leave their homes. Craftsmen prepare their tools. The harbour begins its daily rhythm as sailors move between ships. Athena's city is growing, but the old conflict between sea and city has not ended. It has only entered a new generation. Erechtheus is a fascinating figure in Greek tradition because his story connects kingship, divine ancestry, warfare, sacrifice, and sacred geography. Later Athenians associated him closely with the Acropolis itself, especially through the sanctuary known as the Erechtheion. Yet like many figures from the distant mythic past, his identity changes across sources. Sometimes he appears as a king, sometimes as a hero, sometimes as a figure connected with the earth itself. The traditions overlap like layers of stone, and beneath those layers is another question. Why would Athens remember this king so strongly? Perhaps because his story carried a warning. A city protected by Athena still had obligations toward the powers around it. You enter the royal halls of Erechtheus. They are not like the divine palaces of Olympus. These are human spaces, stone walls, wooden beams, lamps burning with olive oil, the scent of wool, grain, and smoke filling the rooms. The king carries responsibility heavier than a crown. A ruler in ancient Greek thought was not simply an administrator. He stood between the human world and the divine. If the gods were honored, the land prospered. If sacred obligations were ignored, disaster could follow. And now, according to myth, Athens faces danger. An enemy threatens the city. Different traditions tell different versions of the conflict, and the details vary. Some connect Erechtheus with wars against surrounding peoples, while others emphasize the divine consequences surrounding his family. But one element remains consistent. The city needs protection, and once again, Athena and Poseidon become connected. You hear the prophecy before you see the battle. An oracle has spoken. The words are carried quietly through the palace. The city may survive, but survival will demand a terrible price. This pattern appears repeatedly in Greek mythology. Heroes receive warnings. Kings hear predictions. Families discover that destiny cannot always be avoided. The Greeks did not create prophecies because they believed humans had no choices. Instead, prophecy often reveals the tension between choice and fate. A person may know what is coming. The difficult question is what they will do with that knowledge. Erechtheus faces that question. You imagine him standing alone at night upon the Acropolis. The city sleeps below. Torches flicker in the distance. The wind moves through the sacred spaces. Far away, the sea reflects the moon. The king looks toward Poseidon's realm. Perhaps he remembers the old contest. Perhaps he wonders whether the anger of the sea god still follows Athens. Ancient audiences would have understood the fear. A forgotten promise, a neglected ritual, an offended deity. Any of these could bring suffering. Then the warning becomes reality. War arrives. The sound of weapons fills the air. Shields strike together. Horses move across the plain. Dust rises beneath marching feet. Athena's city must defend itself. But victory will not come without sacrifice. This is where the story becomes darker. Some traditions tell that Erechtheus learns victory requires the death of one or more of his daughters. The details differ greatly between sources, and later poets explored the tragedy in different ways. But the emotional center remains. A ruler must choose between the love of family and the survival of the city. You can imagine the silence inside the palace. No thunder, no monsters, no divine armies, only human grief. The daughters of Erechtheus become symbols of loyalty and sorrow. Their story reminds ancient audiences that cities are not built only by heroes and kings. They are built through the sacrifices of ordinary and extraordinary people whose names may eventually disappear. The sacred hill remembers, the stones remember, the stories remember, and above everything, Poseidon watches, because the old rivalry has changed. This is no longer simply about choosing between an olive tree and a spring. Now it is about consequences. Athena may protect Athens, but Poseidon still demands recognition. The sea god's anger has become connected with the fate of Erechtheus himself. A strange sign appears before the final conflict. The people notice that the sea has become unusually calm. Too calm. The harbour's silent. The waves barely move. Fishermen stop their work. They understand the sea, and when the sea becomes unnaturally quiet, it can feel more frightening than a storm. Is Poseidon waiting? Is he preparing? Or is the calm simply the pause before nature changes? No one knows, but the omen remains. The day comes when Erechtheus makes his decision. The city survives. The cost is remembered forever. And afterward, the relationship between Athens and Poseidon becomes even more complicated, because the defeated god is no longer only the rival of Athena. He is now connected with the deepest tragedies of the city's mythic past. You return to the Acropolis after the events have passed. The night air is cool, the sacred fires burn low. The olive tree moves gently in the wind. Below, the sea continues its endless motion. The city has survived, but survival has left scars. And beneath those scars lies a question that Athens will carry for generations. Can a city truly belong to one god when it depends upon the power of another? The answer remains hidden within the stones. You return once again to the Acropolis, not the magnificent marble sanctuary known from later centuries, but the older sacred landscape where memory, ritual, and legend are woven together. The hill rises above Athens like a silent guardian. The stones beneath your feet have witnessed countless generations. Kings have walked here. Priests have carried offerings here. Families have climbed these paths seeking protection from powers they could not control. And somewhere among these ancient rocks is the mark of Poseidon. The people of Athens never forgot that the sea god had once claimed this place. Even after Athena became the city's patron, Poseidon's presence remained. That is what makes the story unusual. A defeated god should disappear. A conquered rival should be removed from memory. Yet the Athenians preserved the signs of both gods. The olive tree of Athena, the mark of Poseidon, two memories standing together. You walk through the sacred spaces where later generations would build temples, and you imagine the voices of priests explaining the old traditions. They point toward a place connected with the ancient contest, and tell visitors that Poseidon struck the rock with his trident. 3 deep marks, a wound in stone, a reminder. The surviving literary traditions describe such a sign, though the exact location and interpretation changed across different periods. Archaeological remains from the Acropolis reveal many layers of rebuilding, destruction, and religious activity, making it difficult to separate the physical remains from later mythological explanations. But perhaps that uncertainty is part of the power of the story. A sacred place does not need to provide perfect answers. It needs to preserve meaning. You touch the cold stone in imagination. The surface feels rough beneath your fingers. How many hands have reached toward this place before you? How many people have stood here beneath the sun, the rain, and the stars? A farmer asking for protection, a sailor preparing for a voyage, a mother praying for a child, a soldier hoping to return home. The mark of Poseidon becomes more than evidence of a divine contest. It becomes a place where humans meet the unpredictable, because every generation of Athenians understood something about Poseidon. The sea could not be ignored. The earthquake could not be negotiated with. Nature did not care about human pride. Athena gave Athens identity. Poseidon reminded Athens of humility. The two lessons existed side by side. As evening falls, you imagine the Acropolis during a religious ceremony. Torches flicker against stone walls. The smell of burning offerings fills the air. Priests move slowly across the sacred ground. The sound of prayers rises into the night. Near Athena's sanctuary, people honor the goddess who gave the city its name. Nearby, traditions connected with Poseidon continue. This balance may seem strange to a modern mind. Why would a victorious city continue honoring the god who opposed its chosen protector? But ancient religion often worked through relationships rather than exclusive allegiance. A community didn't worship only the gods who gave it victories. It respected the gods whose power shaped reality. The sea could feed Athens. The sea could destroy Athens. Both truths were real. You look toward the harbour far below. Even from the hill, you can hear the distant rhythm of waves. Athens will become famous for philosophy, democracy, art, and architecture. But before all those achievements, it is a coastal city. Its fate is connected to ships. Its wealth will depend on trade. Its soldiers will fight across islands and waters. The city chosen by Athena will repeatedly need the favour of Poseidon. This creates a quiet irony. The people who chose wisdom will build a civilization that depends on the sea. Perhaps the Greeks understood this contradiction better than anyone. Human beings often believe they control their destiny. Then the sea changes. A storm arrives. An earthquake shakes the ground. A harvest fails. A disease appears. Suddenly, the limits of human power become clear. This is where Poseidon remains powerful. Not because he defeats Athena, not because he destroys Athens, but because he represents everything beyond human control. A mysterious sign appears as you stand upon the hill. The night is calm, the stars are bright, then the ground beneath you gives a faint movement. Only for a moment. The torches tremble, a few drops of oil spill from a lamp, the priests look toward the sea, they wait. No wave comes, no storm follows. The earth becomes still again. Was it an earthquake? A natural movement beneath the ancient rock? Or a reminder from the earthshaker? The answer disappears with the night, but the people remember. That is how omens become traditions. They survive because they carry emotion. They create questions. They invite future generations to wonder. And perhaps that is why the trident mark matters. The mark is not simply about anger. It is about memory. Poseidon lost the contest, but he was never forgotten. The Greeks did not imagine the world as a place where one force completely defeated another. The sea and the land existed together. Chaos and order existed together. Wisdom and danger existed together. Athena's olive tree grows because the earth allows it. The earth itself is shaken by Poseidon. The city needs both. You remain on the Acropolis as the moon rises. The olive leaves move softly. The stone beneath your feet holds the old mark. The sea below continues breathing against the shore. Two signs from two gods, one city caught between them. And the mystery remains, was Poseidon's hatred truly directed at Athena? Or was it directed at something deeper? The loss of honor, the loss of recognition, the painful truth that even a god can be rejected. Ancient stories rarely answer such questions directly. They leave them resting beneath the surface, like a trident mark hidden in stone. The story of Athens does not remain peaceful after the contest. The olive tree grows, the city develops, the people continue their rituals, but beneath the beauty of the sacred hill another truth remains. A city chosen by a goddess of wisdom is still a city living in a dangerous world. You return to Attica during the legendary age of Erechtheus, when the boundaries between history and myth become covered in mist. Ancient Greeks preserved memories of heroic kings, divine interventions, and wars whose exact origins cannot be reconstructed. Yet the emotional patterns remain clear. Cities are fragile. Kings are tested. The gods are never far away. The morning begins quietly. You stand above the plain as sunlight spreads across the fields. Olive trees cast narrow shadows upon the ground. Farmers move between rows of crops. The smell of fresh earth rises after the night's cool air. In the distance, the sea shines beneath the open sky. It looks peaceful, but peace in Greek mythology is often temporary. A messenger arrives. His clothing is dusty from travel. His voice carries urgency. An enemy is approaching. The exact identity of Athens' opponents changes across different traditions. Some versions connect Erechtheus with conflicts against Olympus, a figure associated with Thrace and with Poseidon through lineage. Others preserve different memories of war and divine involvement. What remains is the same. Poseidon's world has returned to challenge Athena's city. You can almost feel the old rivalry awakening. This sea god's influence has not vanished after losing the contest. His presence continues through those connected with him. Through the coastline, through storms, and through the fears of those who depend upon forces beyond their control. Erechtheus prepares for war. Inside the palace, weapons are gathered. Bronze helmets catch the firelight. Spears rest against wooden walls. Shields are polished until they reflect the flames. The sounds are familiar across Greek legend. The preparation of battle. The silence before violence. The moment when people understand that tomorrow may not belong to them. But before the fighting begins, a warning arrives. An oracle speaks. The city can survive, but survival requires sacrifice. You have heard this pattern before. The Greeks often placed prophecy at the center of their myths because prophecy revealed the tension between knowledge and helplessness. Knowing the future does not always provide escape. Sometimes it only reveals the cost of what must happen. Erechtheus listens. The king who once ruled from the safety of the palace now faces a choice that no ruler desires. Protect the city, or protect his family. You walk with him through the palace halls that evening. The walls are decorated with simple patterns, lamps flicker, shadows move across stone floors. Outside, the wind passes through the olive trees. He pauses beside the sleeping chambers of his children. The sound of their breathing is quiet, human, fragile. The weight of kingship becomes heavier. Ancient audiences understood this moment because they knew that rulers were often trapped between personal love and public duty. A king could not simply think like a father. He carried the survival of a community. But the gods demanded something more. The prophecy waits. The enemy army approaches. Beyond the walls, soldiers gather. You hear the distant movement of feet upon the earth. Horses pull against their harnesses. Bronze weapons strike together as warriors prepare. The sea remains unusually calm. Again, the strange silence returns. The fishermen notice. The harbour workers notice. A sailor looks toward the horizon and says nothing. The calm before a storm. Or a sign from Poseidon. No one knows, but everyone feels the uncertainty. The battle begins. Dust rises across the plain. Shields collide. The cries of warriors echo between the hills. Yet the myth does not focus only on weapons. It focuses on the impossible choices behind them, because Greek legends often reveal that the greatest battles are not always fought with swords. Sometimes they are fought inside the human heart. Erechtheus receives the final message. The sacrifice must happen. Different versions preserve different details. Some tell of his daughters choosing death willingly to save Athens. Others emphasize the tragedy of a royal family consumed by the demands of destiny. The variations are important. They show that ancient communities reshape the story according to their own concerns, but the central sorrow remains. The city survives. The family suffers. You imagine the palace after the decision. The torches burn lower. The halls become silent. The king sits alone. Outside, Athena's olive tree moves gently in the wind. The same tree that represented prosperity now stands beside a moment of grief. This is another reason myths endure. They rarely remain simple. Athena's gift was not only abundance, it was responsibility. A city must protect what it values. Sometimes that protection demands terrible choices, and Poseidon watches. Whether he directly causes the tragedy or simply stands as the divine force associated with the conflict, his presence remains. The old defeat at Athens has become something larger. It is no longer about a spring and an olive tree. It is about consequences. The sea god's anger has entered the fate of kings. As the battle reaches its end, the enemy retreats. Athens survives. But victory does not feel like celebration. The people gather quietly. There are no songs, no great festival, only mourning. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The warning was true, and beneath the stars, the survivors look toward the Acropolis. The olive tree stands above them. The sea stretches beyond the horizon. Two eternal forces, two memories, two gods. You return to the sacred hill after midnight. The city sleeps. The fires are almost extinguished. A cold wind moves across the stones. Then you hear something. A distant sound from below. Not thunder, not footsteps. Waves. The sea is calling, and somewhere beneath the surface, Poseidon's old anger remains. The palace of Erechtheus grows quiet after the prophecy is revealed. You walk through its halls beneath the dim glow of oil lamps. The flames move gently, creating shadows along the stone walls. Outside, the city prepares for war, but inside there is only silence. A king has received a command from fate, and a father has received a terrible burden. The story now turns away from armies and toward the people who stand closest to the heart of the tragedy. The daughters of Erechtheus. Ancient Greek mythology often places women at the center of moments when kingdoms are tested. They may not command armies or carry shields, but their choices reveal the deepest values of a society: loyalty, courage, sacrifice, and the painful cost of survival. Different ancient traditions tell the story in different ways. Some accounts describe one daughter being chosen. Others describe several daughters connected with the sacrifice. Some emphasize their willingness. Others focus on the grief of their family. The details shift across centuries of storytelling, but the emotional truth remains. A city may celebrate victory. A family remembers loss. You imagine the daughters walking through the palace gardens in the evening. The air smells of olive leaves and flowers warmed by the fading sun. Their footsteps pass over smooth stone paths. Beyond the walls, the distant sea glows beneath the orange light of sunset. They know something has changed. The palace servants speak quietly. The king avoids their eyes. The prophecy that once belonged to distant gods has entered their home. Perhaps this is why the story survived. Because the conflict between Poseidon and Athena is not only about divine pride, it becomes a human story. What happens when the needs of many demand the suffering of a few? What does courage look like when there is no victory without pain? Ancient audiences sitting in theatres or listening to poets recite these myths would have understood the question deeply. Every city depends on sacrifice. Every generation inherits the choices of those before it. The daughters of Erechtheus become symbols of that inheritance. You return briefly to the beginning of the rivalry. Poseidon offered strength. Athena offered wisdom. Athena's city was chosen because people believed order and intelligence would guide them toward prosperity. Yet now the city must survive a crisis. Wisdom alone does not remove suffering. This is the deeper complexity of Athena's protection. A wise decision does not guarantee an easy path. A good ruler can still face impossible choices. A favoured city can still experience tragedy. The olive tree grows, but it grows through storms. The prophecy hangs over the palace. Then the daughters make their decision. In many versions of the myth, they accept their fate rather than allow fear to destroy the city. Their willingness transforms the tragedy into an act of devotion. The night before the final moment, you imagine the sisters together. No armies, no gods, no thunder, only human voices. They speak softly beneath the stars. Perhaps they remember childhood. Perhaps they remember the gardens, the palace, the ordinary moments that now feel precious. The sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight, the simple peace of days before prophecy entered their lives. This quiet scene carries a mystery. Did they truly choose their fate? Or did later generations reshape the story because they wanted to honour ideals of sacrifice and loyalty? Historians and classicists continue to examine how Greek myths changed as they moved between oral tradition, poetry, theatre, and religious practice. The uncertainty does not weaken the story. It shows how each generation found new meaning within it. Morning arrives. The city prepares. The prophecy is fulfilled. Athens survives. But the palace is forever changed. You stand outside after everything has ended. The battlefield has grown quiet. The sounds of weapons have disappeared. Only wind remains. The olive branches move above the walls. Far below, the sea continues its endless motion. And there, once again, Poseidon appears in the memory of Athens, not as the god who simply lost, not as a forgotten rival, but as a reminder that every choice has consequences. The people chose Athena, but the cost of that choice became part of the city's identity. Perhaps the Greeks understood something profound about their own civilization. Great cities are not created only by victories. They are created through stories of endurance, through losses remembered, through sacrifices that become traditions. The daughters of Erechtheus are not remembered because they defeated an enemy. They are remembered because they revealed what people were willing to give for something larger than themselves. The same city that honoured Athena's wisdom also preserved this painful story. It didn't hide the tragedy. It carried it. Because memory was sacred. You return once more to the Acropolis. The moon rises above the hill. The stone is cold beneath your feet. The olive tree stands quietly. The mark of Poseidon remains nearby. A city born from a divine contest now carries both signs forever. And another question begins to form. If Poseidon was truly angry at Athena, why did Athens continue honouring him? Why did the city that rejected him preserve his presence beside its greatest goddess? Perhaps because the Greeks knew that the world cannot be divided into simple victories and defeats. The sea cannot be removed. The storm cannot be defeated forever. The powers that challenge us often become the powers that shape us. The night wind moves across the hill. You hear waves below, and the old rivalry continues, not as a battle, but as a memory carved into the foundations of Athens. The story of Erechtheus reaches its darkest moment beneath a sky heavy with silence. You return to Athens after the sacrifice, after the prophecy has been fulfilled, after the city has survived the war that threatened to erase it. But survival does not mean peace. The battlefield is quiet, the enemy has withdrawn, the people are alive, yet something has changed. The victory that should have brought celebration carries the weight of mourning. You walk through the streets of Athens at dawn. The fires in the homes are burning again. Bakers prepare bread. Craftsmen return to their workshops. Farmers inspect their fields. Life continues. It always does. But every person knows what was lost. The names of the daughters of Erechtheus are carried through generations. Their sacrifice becomes part of the city's memory. Their story is repeated during festivals and rituals, reminding Athenians that their city was protected not only by gods, but also by human devotion. And somewhere beneath that memory is Poseidon, the old sea god, the defeated claimant, the power that never truly left. Ancient traditions differ greatly about what happens next. Some versions describe Poseidon directly punishing Erechtheus. Others connect the king's death with divine conflict involving the sea god and Athena. Some accounts emphasize the political and religious meaning of the story rather than a single act of revenge. But the image survives. Poseidon strikes. The Earthshaker turns his anger toward the king who stands for Athens. You stand upon the Acropolis during the moment imagined by myth. The air feels unusually still. The olive tree moves gently. Below, the sea appears calm. Too calm. The city has already learned that Poseidon's silence can be as unsettling as his storms. Then the sign appears, a sudden movement beneath the earth. The stones tremble. Birds rise from the rooftops. A crack echoes across the hill. Not enough to destroy, only enough to remind. The Earthshaker has spoken. To ancient Greeks, earthquakes were among the most terrifying natural events. They arrived without warning. They transformed landscapes in moments. They revealed that the solid ground beneath human feet was not as permanent as people believed. A person could build walls. A person could build temples. A person could build a city. But the earth itself remained beyond complete control. This is where Poseidon's power becomes deeply symbolic. He represents the limits of human confidence. Athena teaches humans how to create. Poseidon reminds them that creation exists within a world they do not fully command. The two gods are opposites, but they are also connected. You imagine Erechtheus standing before the trembling ground. He is not a warrior facing another warrior. He is a mortal facing forces greater than himself. This is a recurring theme in Greek mythology. Kings fall. Heroes age. Cities disappear. Even the greatest achievements of humanity remain temporary. Only memory survives. The tragedy of Erechtheus becomes another layer added to Athens itself. The city is not only the home of Athena, it is also a place where Poseidon's anger, grief, and power are remembered. Later generations would build the Erechtheian sanctuary on the Acropolis, connecting it with both Athena and Poseidon. Archaeologists studying the remains of the site have found evidence of complex religious traditions layered across centuries. The sanctuary itself reflects how ancient Athenians preserved multiple memories within one sacred space. One temple, many stories, one landscape holding competing truths. You can imagine entering such a sanctuary at night. The marble walls are cold beneath your hand. Oil lamps create small circles of light. The air carries the scent of incense. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside, the old gods remain. Athena's presence is nearby. Poseidon's presence is nearby. The rivalry has become architecture. Stone has replaced anger. Ritual has replaced conflict. But the original emotion remains. Why did Poseidon hate Athena? Perhaps because Athena represented something more painful than defeat. She represented being unnecessary. Poseidon was the sea. He was ancient. He was powerful. He was feared. Yet Athens looked at his gift and chose another path. That wound could never truly disappear. But there is another possibility. Perhaps Poseidon didn't hate Athena herself. Perhaps he hated the reminder that even gods must accept limits. the prophecy that haunted Cronus, the fear that troubled Zeus, the division of the cosmos, the judgment of Athens. All of these stories return to the same question. Can anyone possess absolute power? The myths suggest no, not even the gods. The night deepens over Attica. The sea reflects the stars. The olive branches move in the wind. A sailor below the Acropolis prepares his vessel for the next journey, before leaving. He offers a prayer to Poseidon. A farmer nearby touches the bark of an olive tree and thanks Athena. Neither considers this strange, because the world requires both. The sailor needs wisdom to navigate. The farmer needs rain and seasons beyond his control. The city needs protection. The human heart needs humility. And perhaps this is the final lesson hidden within the tragedy of Erechtheus. The rivalry between Athena and Poseidon was never only about hatred. It was about balance. The Greeks lived between mountains and sea, between order and chaos, between human ambition and divine uncertainty. Their myths reflected that existence. The storm eventually passes. The earth becomes still, but the memory remains. The king is gone. The daughters are remembered. The gods continue, and beneath the Acropolis, the old question waits forever. When wisdom defeats power, does power truly disappear? The sea below answers with another wave, then another. It never stops returning. The centuries begin to move more slowly now. The anger of Poseidon is no longer a single storm. The victory of Athena is no longer a single moment. Instead, both become part of something larger. Memory. You return to Athens beneath a softer evening light. The city has changed. Generations have passed since the days of Cecrops and Erechtheus. Houses have multiplied. Roads have formed. Markets have grown. Temples have risen. Yet the old sacred hill remains. The Acropolis still watches over everything. From its heights, you see the same elements that shape the original contest. The sea, the mountains, the olive trees, the people. The city may have grown, but the relationship between Athens and its gods remains built upon the same foundation. Athena is everywhere. Her symbols appear in sculpture, ritual, and civic identity. She is the guardian of the city, the protector of heroes, the goddess associated with wisdom and strategic warfare. But Poseidon has not vanished. He cannot. Athens may belong to Athena, but Athens lives beside the sea. You walk through the harbour of Piraeus in imagination. The sounds are different from the quiet Acropolis. Here, everything moves. Ropes pull against wooden posts. Merchants call out. Sailors carry supplies. Waves strike against stone walls. The air smells of salt, fish, tar, and wet timber. Ships arrive from distant islands. Others prepare to leave. Every vessel carries a reminder. The city chosen by Athena depends upon the realm of Poseidon. This is one of the deepest ironies of the myth. Athena wins the symbolic contest, but Poseidon's power remains essential. A city cannot command the sea simply because it has chosen a different protector. Nature does not disappear because humans prefer another answer. The Athenians understand this. Their rituals reveal it. A sailor preparing for a dangerous voyage may honor Poseidon. A commander preparing a fleet may seek divine favor. A person living beside the coastline knows that respect is wiser than arrogance. The sea does not care who won a contest long ago. The sea demands humility. You return to the Acropolis. The relationship between the two gods becomes visible in sacred space. The later Erechtheion sanctuary, built centuries after the mythical age of these stories, preserves traditions connected with both Athena and Poseidon. Its unusual arrangement reflects a landscape where multiple sacred memories existed together rather than one replacing another. Archaeologists have studied the sanctuary for generations, examining how architecture, inscriptions, and ritual spaces reveal the complexity of ancient Greek religion. What they find is not a simple story of victory and defeat. They find layers, like the earth beneath the Acropolis itself, one age built upon another. One memory placed beside another. You imagine entering the sanctuary at night. The marble is cool. The air is still. An oil lamp flickers beside a column. The shadows seem to move across the walls. Somewhere nearby, the presence of Athena is honored. Somewhere nearby, traditions connected with Poseidon remain. The gods who once competed now share the same sacred landscape. This creates another mystery. Did the Greeks truly see Poseidon and Athena as enemies? Or did later generations use their rivalry to express a deeper truth about Athens itself? Historians continue to debate how myths functioned within Greek society. Some researchers view divine contests as explanations for political identity, showing why a city belonged to a particular deity. Others see them as symbolic stories about human relationships with nature, technology, and power. Perhaps both interpretations contain part of the truth. A myth survives because it can hold many meanings. The people of Athens did not need Poseidon to lose forever. They needed his power to be understood. You stand on the hill as darkness falls. Below you, the city glows with hundreds of small fires. The smell of cooking rises. Voices echo through streets. The ordinary life of Athens continues. And above everything, the gods remain. A strange sign appears in the night. The wind suddenly stops. The torches burn straight upward. The sea below becomes perfectly still. For a moment, the entire city feels suspended between earth and sky. An old priest looking toward the harbour whispers that the gods are listening. Is it a divine sign? A natural moment before a change in weather? Or simply a scene that later storytellers would transform into meaning? No one can know, but the moment is remembered. Because humans have always searched for meaning in silence. The still sea becomes a reminder of Poseidon. The steady flame becomes a reminder of Athena. Two different kinds of calm, one belonging to control, one belonging to a force powerful enough to become quiet. You look back toward the olive tree. Its branches move gently again. The tree has survived generations, storms, wars, changes in kings and governments. It represents something Athena always valued, endurance through intelligence and patience. But beneath the city, the ground remains connected to Poseidon. The foundations rest upon the earth he can shake. The ships rest upon the waters he commands. The people live between both worlds. Perhaps this is why Athens became such a powerful symbol. It was never only a city of wisdom. It was never only a city of the sea. It was both. A place where humans attempted to build order while accepting that the world around them remained unpredictable. The rivalry between Poseidon and Athena slowly transforms. The anger becomes tradition. The competition becomes ritual. The hatred becomes memory. And memory becomes identity. You leave the Acropolis beneath a sky full of stars. The sea continues below. The olive leaves whisper above. The two voices of Athens remain. One speaks of the world that must be respected. The other speaks of the world that can be shaped. And together, they tell the story of a civilization that learned something difficult. Wisdom does not defeat nature. It learns how to live beside it. You return to the Acropolis many generations after the first stories of Athena and Poseidon were told. The hill has changed. The rough paths of the early settlements have become carefully designed spaces. Stone has replaced wood. Temples rise where older shrines once stood. Marble catches the sunlight and glows like something between earth and sky. But beneath these magnificent structures, the old memories remain. The Acropolis is not only a place of beauty, it is a place of remembrance. And among its most mysterious sacred spaces stands the Erechtheion. You approach it as evening approaches Athens. The sky turns golden above the city. The marble walls begin to absorb the fading light. The air carries the scent of olive trees and distant fires. From below comes the quiet rhythm of daily life, while above, the sacred hill rests beneath the first appearance of stars. This is a place built around a contradiction, a sanctuary dedicated to traditions connected with both Athena and Poseidon. Two divine powers who once competed for the same land. Two memories preserved within the same sacred space. You walk across the stone floor. The atmosphere feels different here. The Parthenon, with its grand columns and powerful symmetry, would later represent Athena's glory in a way immediately understood by visitors. The Erechtheion feels more intimate, more mysterious, as though it holds older whispers beneath its walls. Ancient traditions connected this area with several sacred stories. The olive tree of Athena, the mark of Poseidon's trident, the legendary king Erechtheus, the places associated with early Athens, everything seems layered together. This is exactly what makes the sanctuary fascinating. It does not erase conflict, it preserves it. You can imagine an ancient visitor arriving here. They do not see a simple story where one god defeats another and disappears. They see evidence that both remain important. A priest explains the traditions. A visitor asks questions. The answer is not always clear. Perhaps that uncertainty is part of the experience. Greek religion often developed through accumulated layers of belief. A sanctuary could contain memories from different periods, traditions from different communities, and interpretations that changed over centuries. The ancient world was not frozen. It was constantly rebuilding itself. The same was true of myths. You look toward the place associated with Poseidon. The sea god's presence here feels different from his earlier anger. He is no longer the storm approaching Athens. He is part of Athens. This transformation reveals something important about Greek mythology. The gods were not only characters in stories, they represented relationships between humans and the world around them. Poseidon represented the sea, earthquakes, horses, and forces beyond human control. Athena represented wisdom, crafts, strategy, and the ability to create order. A city beside the sea needed both. The Erechtheion became a physical reminder of that truth. Outside, the wind moves through the olive trees. The leaves create a soft sound. You hear it almost like distant whispers. Ancient visitors might have connected this tree with Athena's original gift. Some traditions even remembered the sacred olive as possessing miraculous endurance, surviving destruction, and returning as a symbol of renewal. Whether every detail reflects historical events or religious imagination is impossible to determine, but the symbolism is powerful. The olive survives. The city survives. Memory survives. Then you turn toward the sea. From the Acropolis, the Aegean stretches into the distance. On clear days, islands appear like shadows upon the horizon. The view explains so much about Athens. This city could never separate itself from Poseidon. Every ship leaving the harbour carried prayers. Every storm approaching the coastline carried fear. Every earthquake reminded people of the power beneath their feet. The Athenians may have chosen Athena as their protector, but they lived within Poseidon's world. A mysterious event enters the story here. Ancient traditions speak of unusual signs connected with sacred places. Imagine a night when the guardians of the sanctuary notice something strange. The lamps burn lower than usual. The air becomes unusually cold. The sea beyond the city reflects the moon without movement. A priest walks toward the sacred spaces and hears a sound beneath the stone, a deep distant movement, like waves beneath the earth. He places his hand against the wall. The sound disappears. Was Poseidon reminding the city that he remained present? Or was it simply the imagination of someone standing in a place filled with ancient stories? The answer disappears, but the question remains. And questions are what keep myths alive. The Erechtheion itself becomes a symbol of reconciliation without forgetting. Athena does not destroy Poseidon's memory. Poseidon does not erase Athena's victory. The rivalry becomes something more complex, a relationship between opposing forces. This reflects something deeply human. People often carry conflicting truths at the same time. A person can love the sea and fear it. A person can seek independence and still depend upon others. A civilization can celebrate human achievement while remembering human limitations. Athens understood this balance. The city that gave the world philosophers, artists, and architects was also a city that prayed before voyages and feared earthquakes. It was a place of confidence and humility. The Erechtheion preserved that duality. You remain there as night settles over the Acropolis. The marble becomes silver beneath the moon. The torches flicker. The city below becomes quieter. The olive tree moves softly. The sea answers with distant waves. For a moment, it feels as though Athena and Poseidon are no longer enemies. Perhaps they never truly were. Perhaps their rivalry was a story created to explain something deeper. Human life exists between what can be controlled and what cannot, between the wisdom to build and the humility to endure, between the city and the sea. You leave the sanctuary slowly. Behind you remain the stones that remember. Ahead lies a city still growing, and far below, beneath the moonlit waters, Poseidon waits, not defeated, not forgotten, simply part of the eternal story of Athens. The story of Athens now enters a new age. The city that began as a small settlement beneath the watch of two competing gods grows into one of the most remarkable powers of the ancient Mediterranean. The hills become crowded with homes, the markets fill with voices, the harbour becomes a gateway connecting Athens with distant lands. And everywhere you look, the old rivalry remains. Athena watches from the heights. Poseidon surrounds the city. You walk through Athens at dawn. The streets are already alive. Merchants arrange pottery and woven cloth. Farmers bring olives, grain, and wine from the countryside. Craftsmen prepare bronze tools and carved objects. The smell of fresh bread mixes with the scent of animals, smoke, and the sea breeze moving through the city. Above it all stands the Acropolis. The sacred hill is not simply a place of worship. It is the heart of identity. Athena is no longer only the goddess who planted an olive tree. She has become the symbol of the city itself. Her image appears in rituals and stories. Her wisdom represents the qualities Athens wishes to celebrate: intelligence, discipline, artistic skill, and strategic thinking. But below the hill, another world moves. The harbour, the sea, the realm of Poseidon. This creates the great contradiction at the centre of Athens. The city belongs to Athena. Its survival depends on Poseidon. You follow a group of sailors preparing a ship before departure. The vessel rests on wooden supports near the water. The hull is coated with protective materials. Ropes are tightened. Supplies are loaded. Every movement requires skill. Every journey requires courage. A sailor looks toward the Acropolis before stepping aboard. Perhaps he thinks of Athena. Then he turns toward the waves. Perhaps he thinks of Poseidon. This was not unusual. Ancient Greeks often honoured multiple gods connected with different parts of life. A person could pray to Athena for wisdom and Poseidon for safe travel without seeing a contradiction. The divine world was not a competition where only one power could exist. The contest for Athens was a myth about choosing a protector. It was not a declaration that the losing god had become meaningless. You return to the old question: why did Poseidon hate Athena? The more you follow the story, the more complicated the answer becomes. Perhaps it was not simply hatred. Perhaps it was wounded pride. Perhaps it was the pain of being rejected. Perhaps it was the frustration of a god whose power was necessary but whose gift was not chosen. Because Athena's victory represented something unusual. A mortal community had judged between divine powers, and the decision had favoured a goddess whose strength was not overwhelming force. It favoured wisdom. This idea would become deeply connected with Athens itself. The city would eventually become famous for philosophy, debate, art, and political experimentation. Later generations would look back and see Athena's influence everywhere, but the sea remained, and the sea would shape Athens just as profoundly. You stand near the harbour during a summer evening. The sun sinks slowly. The water turns gold. Ships move like dark shapes against the horizon. Children play near the shore. Fishermen repair their nets. Merchants count their goods. The city breathes with the rhythm of Poseidon's world. A strange omen appears. The sailors notice that several birds flying above the harbour suddenly turn away from the open sea and return toward land. Older men watch silently. They know that ancient people often search for meaning in the natural world. Birds, dreams, weather, fire, unusual events. These could become signs when people were uncertain about the future. Was this a warning, a message from Poseidon, or simply the movement of birds responding to invisible changes in the wind? No one knows, but the sailors delay their departure. They wait. They respect what they cannot understand. This moment reveals something important about ancient Greek thinking. Wisdom did not mean believing humans controlled everything. True wisdom included recognizing limits. Athena herself, despite representing intelligence, never removes uncertainty from the world. She helps heroes navigate uncertainty. She does not eliminate it. That is why she and Poseidon remain connected. One teaches humans how to think, the other reminds them that thought exists within a world larger than themselves. The centuries continue. Athens expands. Its ships travel farther. Its influence spreads across the Aegean, and the irony becomes stronger. The city named for Athena becomes one of the greatest naval powers of Greece. Its strength depends upon fleets. Its wealth depends upon maritime trade. Its victories depend upon sailors crossing Poseidon's waters. Some ancient writers and modern historians have noted this tension as part of Athens' identity, a city that celebrated wisdom while building power through the sea. The contradiction is not a weakness. It is the reason the story endures. Humans are always living between opposing forces. We build homes, knowing storms can destroy them. We create ships, knowing oceans can overwhelm them. We seek knowledge, knowing mysteries remain. Athena and Poseidon become symbols of that condition. You return once more to the Acropolis at night. The city lights are small beneath the vast sky. The olive leaves move quietly. The sea reflects the stars. The old rivalry feels distant now. The anger has become memory. The conflict has become tradition. But the question remains hidden beneath everything. If Poseidon truly hated Athena, why did the Greeks continue to honor both? Perhaps because the Greeks understood that life itself is not built from one force. It is built from balance. The city needs wisdom. The city needs the sea. The human heart needs ambition. The human heart needs humility. And beneath the moonlight of Athens, two ancient powers remain together. Athena above the city, Poseidon beyond the shore, neither forgotten, neither defeated completely. The morning sun rises over Athens and the city wakes to the sound of the sea. You stand near the harbour as workers prepare the vessels that will carry Athenian influence across the Aegean. The air is filled with movement. Wooden beams creak beneath the weight of ships being repaired. Ropes scrape against rough hands. Bronze fittings shine beneath the sunlight. The smell of salt water mixes with tar, fresh timber, and the smoke of small cooking fires. This is the world of Poseidon. Yet above the harbour, on the distant hill, stands Athena's city. The contradiction has become impossible to ignore. Athens has chosen wisdom, but wisdom has built ships, and those ships must enter the realm of the sea god. You watch as sailors prepare for departure before stepping aboard. They perform rituals, they check the winds, they examine the sky. They speak quietly about the journey ahead. A voyage is never just a journey. It is an agreement with uncertainty. Ancient Greeks understood this better than many civilizations because the sea surrounded them. Islands, mountains, and coastlines created a world where travel by water was often faster and more practical than travel by land. But the sea was never completely predictable. A clear morning could become a violent afternoon. A calm horizon could hide a storm. A skilled captain could still be defeated by nature. And so sailors respected Poseidon. You imagine one of them standing beside the ship before departure. His hand rests upon the wooden rail. He looks toward the Acropolis. Perhaps he offers a prayer to Athena for intelligence and careful decisions. Then he looks toward the waves. He offers a prayer to Poseidon for safe passage. Both prayers matter. This is the reality of Athens. The city of Athena must live with Poseidon's power. As centuries pass, this relationship becomes even more important. Athens develops into a maritime force. Its ships become symbols of strength. Its navy allows it to influence distant islands and compete with rival powers across the Greek world. The same sea that once represented Poseidon's gift now becomes the foundation of Athenian power. There is a quiet irony. The god who lost the contest helps shape the future of the city. The people who chose Athena must rely on the realm of Poseidon. Perhaps ancient storytellers understood that victory is never complete. No city stands alone. No human achievement exists without forces beyond human control. You return to the sacred hill. From the Acropolis, you can see the ships below. They appear small against the endless water. The view creates a powerful image. Athena's temples above, Poseidon's sea below, the goddess and the god connected by the lives of thousands of people travelling between them. A mysterious event enters the story. One evening, as preparations begin for a major voyage, sailors notice something unusual. The sea becomes completely still. Not calm, still. The surface looks like polished stone beneath the moon. No waves, no movement, no sound except the creaking of ships. The older sailors become uneasy. They have learned that the sea's silence can be more frightening than its anger. A young sailor asks what it means. An older man tells him that Poseidon sometimes speaks through storms, but sometimes he speaks through absence. Is it a warning, a divine sign, or simply a rare moment when wind and water become perfectly balanced? The sailors wait until morning. They do not challenge the unknown. That hesitation reveals an important aspect of ancient Greek culture. Respect was not weakness. Caution was not fear. A wise person understood when to act and when to wait. This connects deeply with Athena's values. Wisdom is not simply knowing what to do, it is knowing when not to act. Perhaps this is why Athena and Poseidon remain such powerful companions within Greek imagination. They appear opposed, but they also complete one another. A ship requires both. The builder needs knowledge. The sailor needs courage. The vessel needs structure. The ocean requires respect. Without Athena, the ship may never be created. Without Poseidon, the ship may never return. You imagine the ship finally leaving the harbour. The oars strike the water in rhythm. The sails rise. The coastline slowly disappears. The sailors look back one last time. Athena's city becomes a line of stone beneath the morning sun. Ahead lies the open sea, the realm of Poseidon. For a moment, the old rivalry feels present again. The city chose Athena. The ship enters Poseidon's world. But there is no battle, no storm, no divine punishment, only a journey. Perhaps this is another meaning hidden inside the myth. The greatest rivalries are not always resolved by one side destroying the other. Sometimes they become relationships of necessity. Athens did not defeat the sea. It learned to navigate it. Human civilization often follows the same path. People cannot command every force around them. They cannot stop storms, earthquakes, aging, or time, but they can learn, they can adapt, they can build ships, they can plant olive trees, they can create meaning within an unpredictable world. The sun sets over the Aegean, the ship continues across the water. Above it stars appear. Below it, the deep sea moves silently. Somewhere in the darkness beneath the waves, Poseidon remains, not as an enemy, not as a forgotten rival, as a reminder. The world is powerful. Respect it, understand it, and never believe wisdom alone makes you the master of everything, because even the greatest city of the ancient world sailed upon waters it could never completely control. The sea that once separated communities now becomes the path through which Athens reaches the wider world. You follow the ships beyond the harbour. The coastline of Attica slowly disappears behind you. The Acropolis becomes smaller, fading into the morning mist. The sailors continue rowing beneath the open sky, carrying supplies, weapons, and the hopes of the city that stands behind them. Above them is Athena, below them is Poseidon. The old rivalry travels with every ship. The Aegean is beautiful from a distance. Sunlight dances upon the waves. Islands rise like sleeping animals from the horizon. The air smells of salt and wind. Dolphins move beside vessels, and seabirds follow the currents above. But sailors know another truth. The same waters that carry them forward can also become their greatest danger. The sea is never fully owned. It is borrowed. This understanding shapes Athens as it grows. The city becomes increasingly connected to naval power. Its fleets allow trade, communication, and military expansion. The harbour becomes a place where the city's future is prepared every day through the work of thousands of hands. You walk among those hands. A shipbuilder measures wood. A sailor repairs a rope. A soldier checks a shield. A merchant counts his goods. Everyone depends upon a chain of decisions, a mistake in planning, a failure in judgment, a sudden change in weather. Any one of these can alter the fate of a voyage. This is where Athena's influence appears. The Athenians believe intelligence can create advantage. careful strategy, organization, preparation. These qualities become associated with the goddess who won their city. But every strategy eventually meets something beyond calculation. The sea, the storm, the unexpected. Poseidon remains there. You enter the age of great conflicts across the Aegean. The details of these wars belong to historical periods far removed from the earliest myths of Athens, but the symbolic connection remains powerful. A city built around Athena's ideals becomes one of the greatest naval powers of the ancient world, repeatedly testing itself against enemies across the waters. The old question returns: can wisdom control the sea? Athens attempts to answer. Its leaders plan campaigns. Its generals study geography. Its sailors train for years. Its shipbuilders create advanced vessels. Human skill reaches extraordinary levels. Yet the ancient Greeks never forget the gods. Before battles at sea, rituals are performed. Offerings are made. Prayers are spoken, not because people lack intelligence, because intelligence alone cannot remove uncertainty. You stand aboard an Athenian ship before battle. The morning is quiet, too quiet. The soldiers wait. The oars rest. The horizon appears empty. Then an unusual sign appears. A group of seabirds suddenly leaves the water and flies inland. The sailors become silent. Some believe it is an omen. Others dismiss it. Perhaps the birds simply sensed a change in weather. But ancient warfare was filled with moments like this, where humans searched for meaning before facing danger. A decision must be made: advance or wait. The commander thinks. He does not rush. He considers. Perhaps this is Athena's lesson. The wisdom to pause. The courage to decide. The fleet moves. The battle begins. The sea fills with movement. Wood strikes wood. Oars break the surface. Voices echo across the water. The ships become instruments of human ambition. But beneath them is the endless depth of Poseidon's realm. Every warrior understands the danger. A battlefield on land gives the illusion of stability. A battlefield at sea offers none. The ground moves beneath you. The horizon changes. The wind becomes an enemy. The sea itself becomes part of the conflict. This is why Poseidon remains such a powerful figure in Greek imagination. He does not need to appear physically to influence events. His presence exists in every uncertain wave, in every sailor's fear, in every moment when humans realize their plans depend upon forces beyond themselves. The battle ends. Perhaps Athens wins. Perhaps another city triumphs. The ancient world contains many victories and defeats, but every sailor who returns understands the same lesson. Survival itself is a kind of victory. You return to Athens after the campaign. The city celebrates. Crowds gather. Stories spread. Generals are praised. Ships are honored. But beneath the celebration, the old balance remains. Athena receives thanks. Poseidon receives respect. Neither can be ignored. The city may believe strategy brought victory. The sailors know the sea allowed them to return. At night, you climb the Acropolis. The city below is filled with small points of fire. The harbour glows. The waves reflect the moon. You stand between two worlds. Above you, Athena's temples represent human achievement. Below you, Poseidon's sea represents the unknown. A question appears. Perhaps Athens never truly chose between them. Perhaps it chose how to live with both. The ancient contest was remembered as a rivalry, but the future of Athens became a partnership between opposing forces. The city learned to think like Athena, but it learned to respect Poseidon. And maybe this was the deeper wisdom hidden in the myth. The greatest civilizations are not those that conquer every force around them. They are those that understand which forces must be respected. The night grows quiet. The ships rest in the harbour. The olive trees move softly above the city. And far beyond the shore, the sea continues its eternal rhythm, wave after wave, like a memory that never disappears. The story of Athena and Poseidon does not remain confined to one hill. The contest for Athens becomes the most famous memory connecting them. But their rivalry appears throughout the wider Greek world, wherever humans seek protection, power, and identity. These two gods seem to move close together. You leave Attica once again. The sea stretches before you. Islands rise from the horizon. Mountains disappear into morning mist. The Greek world is not one single land. It is a collection of coastlines, valleys, islands, and communities connected by ships and stories. Each place preserves its own traditions. Each city remembers the gods differently. And within those memories, Athena and Poseidon continue to meet. Sometimes as rivals, sometimes as allies, sometimes as two powers whose relationship is difficult to define. This complexity is important. Ancient mythology rarely creates simple enemies. The gods argue because humans argue. They compete because humans compete. They struggle because the forces of life itself often appear to contradict each other. You travel first toward Corinth. The city sits near a narrow passage connecting different parts of Greece. Its position gives it enormous importance. Ships passing through the region must respect the power of the sea. Here, Poseidon holds deep significance. The Isthmian Games, one of the great athletic festivals of ancient Greece, were dedicated to Poseidon. Athletes, musicians, and visitors gathered to honor the sea god through competition and celebration. Imagine arriving during such a festival. The air is filled with voices. Musicians play, sacred fires burn, the smell of roasted food mixes with sea air. Athletes prepare beneath the watchful presence of the god. Poseidon is not remembered here only as the angry rival of Athena. He is honored, respected, celebrated, and this reveals something essential. The Greeks did not preserve myths because they wanted gods to fit into simple categories. Poseidon could be terrifying. He could also be generous. He could destroy ships. He could protect sailors. The same sea that threatens life also allows life to flourish. You continue your journey. The relationship between Athena and Poseidon appears again in stories of heroes. One of the most famous examples involves Odysseus. You know the pattern. Poseidon becomes the enemy. Athena becomes the protector. The conflict appears personal, but beneath the adventure lies the same symbolic tension. Odysseus survives through intelligence. He defeats challenges not through strength alone, but through planning, deception, patience, and cleverness. He reflects Athena's values, yet his journey takes place across Poseidon's domain. The sea becomes the obstacle he cannot simply outsmart. This creates a fascinating echo of the contest for Athens. Athena represents the mind. Poseidon represents the world the mind must navigate. A clever person can design a ship. A clever person can read the stars. A clever person can plan a voyage. But a clever person still cannot command every wave. The Odyssey preserves this truth. You imagine Odysseus alone upon the water. The night sky spreads above him. The ship creaks. The waves rise. He survives because Athena guides him. But he must still endure Poseidon's sea. The old rivalry continues through another generation. A mystery remains. Why did Greek storytellers repeatedly place Athena and Poseidon on opposite sides of human struggles? Historians continue to debate the deeper origins of these patterns. Some researchers believe these conflicts reflect the competition between different local cult traditions. Others suggest they symbolize broader human experiences, the struggle between civilization and nature, planning and uncertainty, human ambition and the limits imposed by the world. Perhaps mythology allows both interpretations to exist. You travel farther through the Greek landscape. You find temples, sanctuaries, and sacred places where people once prayed. Some belong to Athena. Some belong to Poseidon. Some preserve traditions connected with both. Every sanctuary tells a story. Every offering reveals a relationship. A small object left behind thousands of years ago can reveal what mattered to someone who lived and died long before your own time. A clay figure, a bronze offering, a carved inscription, fragments of worship. Archaeology gives us pieces. Myth gives them meaning. Together, they reveal a world where humans constantly negotiated with powers larger than themselves. As evening falls, you stand near the sea. A storm approaches in the distance. The clouds gather slowly. The first drops touch the ground. A fisherman beside you watches the horizon. He does not run. He does not panic. He simply waits. He understands. The storm is not evil. The sea is not cruel. It is powerful. That distinction is the heart of Poseidon, and perhaps it explains why Athena's victory did not destroy him. A city can celebrate wisdom, but wisdom requires something to confront. Without uncertainty, intelligence has no purpose. Without danger, courage has no meaning. Without the sea, Athens would never become the Athens remembered by history. The rain grows heavier. The fisherman lights a small lamp beneath shelter. The flame remains steady, a small symbol of Athena's order within Poseidon's storm. The image feels almost like the entire myth. Two forces, not identical, not enemies forever, but forever connected. You return in imagination to the Acropolis. The olive tree grows. The sea moves below. The old trident mark remains in stone. The story has travelled far beyond Athens, and now you understand something deeper. Poseidon did not simply hate Athena because she won. He represented everything that could not be controlled. Athena represented humanity's attempt to create order within that uncertainty. The Greeks needed both stories. They needed the wisdom to build cities, and they needed the humility to remember that every city stands beside a sea it cannot command. The sea grows darker as you follow the path of another famous Greek story. Far away from Athens, beyond the olive groves and sacred hills of Attica, another conflict unfolds across the waters. It is a story of a wandering king, a powerful god, and a goddess whose greatest weapon is not strength, but wisdom. The story of Odysseus. You stand beside the shores of the Aegean once again. The wind moves through the grass. The waves strike the rocks. The same sea that carried Greek ships toward distant wars now becomes the place where one man will struggle for survival. And once again, Poseidon and Athena stand on opposite sides. At first glance, the reason seems simple. Poseidon hates Odysseus because the hero blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. The sea god's anger becomes personal. His storms delay Odysseus' journey home. His power keeps the hero separated from Ithaca, from his wife Penelope, and from the life he longs to recover. But beneath this familiar story lies a deeper connection to the rivalry between Poseidon and Athena. Odysseus survives because he possesses the qualities Athena values most: cunning, patience, strategic thinking, the ability to find a path when strength alone cannot succeed. He is not the strongest warrior. He is not the most powerful king. He is the person who thinks when others panic. You follow him across the sea. The ship moves beneath a dark sky. Rain falls. The wind rises. The crew struggles against waves larger than their vessel. Somewhere beneath the surface, Poseidon moves. The sea god is not portrayed as irrational. He is angry because an important boundary has been crossed. His son has been harmed. His honor has been challenged. Once again, the ancient theme returns. Honor, respect, recognition. The same emotions that shaped the contest for Athens now shape the fate of Odysseus. Poseidon does not simply represent destruction. He represents the consequences of offending a power greater than yourself. Odysseus is clever, but cleverness has limits. This is the lesson. A person may escape monsters. A person may deceive enemies. A person may create brilliant plans. But the world remains larger than any individual. You imagine Odysseus standing alone on a raft. The night sky surrounds him. The stars are hidden behind clouds. The ocean stretches in every direction. There is no road, no wall, no shelter, only water. This is Poseidon's world. The hero's intelligence cannot build a bridge across the sea. It cannot force the waves to become calm. He needs help, and that help comes from Athena. She watches from Olympus. She does not remove every difficulty. She does not simply transport Odysseus home. Instead, she guides. She advises. She creates opportunities. This is exactly the kind of power associated with Athena. She does not replace human effort. She strengthens it. You can see the contrast clearly. Poseidon creates obstacles that test survival. Athena creates solutions that require wisdom. One challenges, the other guides. Together, they create the journey. Without Poseidon, there would be no great trial. Without Athena, there would be no path through it. The Odyssey becomes another version of the ancient rivalry, nature and intelligence. The uncontrollable world and the human ability to adapt. A question appears. If Athena represents wisdom, why does she need Poseidon? Why not simply remove the danger? Perhaps because wisdom only becomes meaningful when danger exists. A calm sea does not require navigation. A safe path does not require strategy. A world without challenges would never reveal human capability. The Greeks understood this. Their heroes were not great because they avoided hardship. They were great because they endured it. As Odysseus continues his journey, the pattern repeats. He encounters impossible situations. He loses companions. He faces temptation. He experiences loneliness. But he continues. His greatest weapon remains his mind, and that makes his struggle with Poseidon especially meaningful. The sea god cannot be defeated by force. Odysseus cannot overpower the ocean. He can only survive. That is another lesson hidden within the myth. Humans rarely conquer nature completely. They learn to live with it. You return to the image of Athens, the same city chosen by Athena, the same city dependent upon Poseidon's sea. The same balance appears again. Odysseus needs Athena. Odysseus needs to respect Poseidon. The hero succeeds only when both realities are understood. A mysterious sign appears during his journey. One night, after surviving another storm, Odysseus sees the waves suddenly become calm. The clouds separate. The stars appear. A single bird flies across the moonlit sky. Is the storm over because Poseidon has finally softened? Is Athena guiding the moment? Or is it simply the unpredictable nature of the sea? Ancient stories often leave these moments uncertain. They invite reflection rather than provide simple explanations. The journey continues. Odysseus eventually returns home. Athena's guidance leads him toward victory. Poseidon's anger does not last forever. The sea god's wrath becomes another chapter in a much larger story. And when you look back, you see the same pattern that began with Athens. Poseidon and Athena are not simply enemies. They represent two truths. The world contains forces beyond control, and within that world, humans possess the ability to think, adapt, and endure. The sea remains. The mind remains. The journey continues. And beneath the endless stars, the old rivalry echoes across Greek memory, not as a story of hatred alone, but as a story about how humanity survives between wisdom and the unknown. The story of Athena and a Poseidon has travelled through centuries. It has moved from the hills of Attica to the islands of the Aegean, from temples filled with incense to poems recited beneath the evening skies. Kings have disappeared, cities have changed, empires have risen and fallen. Yet the question remains, why did Poseidon hate Athena? By now, you have seen that the answer is not as simple as a single argument between two gods. The rivalry contains layers. Like the stones beneath the Acropolis, each generation placed another meaning upon it. You return once again to ancient Athens. The city is alive. The marketplace fills with voices. Ships arrive at the harbour. Philosophers walk through shaded paths. Craftsmen shape marble and bronze. Citizens gather to discuss matters of war, politics, and religion. This is the world that later generations would associate with Athens, a city famous for human thought, a city named for Athena, and yet, every person living there understands something important. The city exists beside a force it cannot control. The sea. The Greeks did not need mythology to tell them the ocean was powerful. They experienced it every day. A fisherman could leave in calm weather and never return. A merchant could lose an entire voyage to a sudden storm. A navy could win one battle and be destroyed by the next. The sea offered opportunity. The sea carried danger. Poseidon represented this reality. Athena represented another. The human response. The ability to observe, plan, create, and adapt. This is why many later interpretations see their rivalry as more than a story about two divine personalities. Some researchers believe the contest reflects the relationship between different communities and religious traditions that existed across Greece. Others interpret it symbolically, as a story about civilization confronting nature, intelligence confronting uncertainty, or human ambition existing beside forces beyond human control. Historians continue to debate the exact origins of these myths, but perhaps the ancient Greeks themselves didn't need a single explanation. A powerful myth can carry many truths at once. You walk through an ancient sanctuary. The stone is warm beneath the afternoon sun. A priest prepares an offering. The smell of olive oil and burning incense rises into the air. A visitor asks about the old contest. The priest does not describe a simple victory. He explains a relationship. Athena gave the city wisdom. Poseidon gave the city a reminder. Every gift creates responsibility. The olive tree requires care. The sea requires respect. This understanding appears throughout Greek mythology. The gods do not simply reward humans, they teach them, sometimes through blessings, sometimes through suffering, sometimes through stories that remain mysterious. You think again of the sacred olive tree. It represents patience. An olive tree does not grow overnight. It requires years before it provides abundance. It survives drought. It survives storms. It becomes part of the landscape. This reflects Athena's values. The greatest achievements of civilization require time. Cities are not created in a single moment. Knowledge is not gained instantly. Wisdom develops slowly. Then you think of Poseidon's sea. The waves do not care how patient humans are. A storm does not stop because a city has built beautiful temples. The sea remains powerful. This reflects another truth. Human progress does not remove vulnerability. The Greeks understood this balance deeply. Their temples were magnificent, but earthquakes could damage them. Their ships were advanced, but storms could destroy them. Their armies were powerful, but fate could change everything. The rivalry between Athena and Poseidon allowed them to express this reality. A mysterious question remains. Did the Greeks see one god as superior, or did they understand that both were necessary? The answer may depend on where you stood. A philosopher might praise Athena's wisdom. A sailor might fear and honor Poseidon. A farmer might depend upon Athena's olive. A coastal family might pray to Poseidon before every voyage. Different lives created different relationships with the divine. This is why Greek religion was so diverse. The gods were not distant ideas. They were woven into daily existence. A person could wake beneath Athena's protection and still ask Poseidon for mercy before crossing the sea. There was no contradiction, because life itself contains contradictions. You can love something and fear it. You can depend on something and know it can harm you. You can seek control while accepting that control is incomplete. That is the human condition. And perhaps that is why this ancient rivalry still feels familiar. Every person experiences a version of it. The desire to create order, the reality of uncertainty, the hope that intelligence can guide us, the knowledge that some things remain beyond our reach. Athena and Poseidon continue to represent those opposing forces, not enemies locked forever in anger, but symbols of a world where humanity must exist between certainty and mystery. Night falls over Athens. The marketplace becomes quiet. The harbour lights disappear one by one. The Acropolis stands beneath the stars. The olive leaves move gently in the breeze. Far below, the sea continues its endless rhythm. A city, a goddess, a sea god, a story that refuses to disappear. And perhaps the deepest lesson is not that Athena defeated Poseidon. Perhaps it is that Athens became great because it remembered both. It remembered wisdom. It remembered power. It remembered that every achievement stands beside forces greater than itself. And beneath the moonlit sky, the old question finally changes. Not, why did Poseidon hate Athena? But, why did the Greeks need both of them? The centuries continue to pass. The voices of ancient Athens slowly become quieter. The footsteps of priests fade from marble paths. The songs once carried through festivals disappear into the wind. The hands that touch the sacred olive tree are long gone, yet the story remains. This is the strange power of myth. A moment that may have begun as a local tradition becomes something carried across thousands of years. You return to the Acropolis one final time as the evening light settles over the city. The marble is no longer bright beneath the sun. It has become soft and golden. The shadows of columns stretch across the ground. The wind moves through the olive branches. Below, Athens continues living. People walk through streets that have changed countless times. New buildings rise, old ones disappear, generations replace one another. But above them, the old memories remain. Athena's victory, Poseidon's anger, the contest for the city, the question of whether wisdom or power should define a civilization. At first, the story seems like a tale of hatred. A god loses, a goddess wins, the defeated power becomes angry. But as you have travelled deeper into the myth, something more complicated appears. Poseidon's hatred does not erase his importance. It preserves it, because a forgotten enemy leaves no mark. A remembered rival becomes part of history. The Athenians could have told a story where Poseidon simply disappeared after losing. They could have removed his presence from the sacred hill. Instead, they kept his memory. The trident mark remained. The traditions continued. The sea god stayed connected with the city. Why? Perhaps because the Greeks understood that identity is not created only by victories. It is also created by struggles. The challenges we face shape who we become. Athena's wisdom would mean little without problems requiring wisdom. A city protected from every danger would never learn resilience. A sailor who never encounters storms would never learn courage. The rivalry itself becomes a lesson. You walk toward the place associated with the old olive tree. The tree has become more than a gift. It has become a symbol of endurance. Storms may arrive. Wars may come. Cities may fall and rise again. But life continues. The olive grows. Then you look toward the sea. The waves move beneath the fading light. Poseidon's world appears endless. The ocean does not remember human victories. It does not care which city was named after which god. It continues. Ancient Greeks understood this. Perhaps that is why Poseidon remained powerful in their imagination. He represented the parts of existence that humans cannot completely organize. Time, nature, death, change. Athena represented the human response. Knowledge, craft, planning, creation. Together, they formed a complete picture of existence. Not because they agreed, because they did not. The tension between them reflected the tension within human life. You can build something beautiful and still know it may not last. You can gain wisdom and still face uncertainty. You can prepare carefully and still encounter forces beyond your control. This is why the old rivalry survived. It was never only about two gods. It was about everyone. A mysterious question remains at the end of the journey. Did Poseidon ever truly forgive Athena? The myths do not provide a clear answer. Some traditions show continued rivalry. Others show cooperation between divine powers who were once opposed. Perhaps forgiveness was never the point. Perhaps the Greeks were more interested in balance than resolution. The sea does not apologize for storms. The olive tree does not apologize for needing years to grow. Both simply exist according to their nature, and humans must learn how to live between them. You imagine the final evening of ancient Athens. The city is quiet. A priest extinguishes a sacred flame. A sailor secures his ship before the night voyage. A farmer closes the gate of an olive grove. 3 people, 3 lives, 3 relationships with the same world. The priest remembers Athena. The sailor remembers Poseidon. The farmer remembers both. Because wisdom requires awareness of danger, and respect for danger requires wisdom. The old prophecy returns one final time. Not the prophecy of Zeus, not the warning surrounding Erechtheus, but the quiet truth hidden beneath the entire story. No power exists alone. Even gods depend upon relationships. Even cities depend upon balance. Even civilizations built by human intelligence remain connected to forces older than themselves. The night deepens. The stars appear above the Acropolis. The marble cools beneath the moonlight. The olive leaves whisper. The sea answers. For thousands of years, these 2 sounds have existed together. One from the earth, one from the water, one from the goddess who taught humans how to build, one from the god who reminded them what they could never control. Poseidon and Athena began as rivals. They ended as memories woven into the same landscape. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. The strongest rivalries are not always destroyed. Sometimes they become the stories that define us. The night settles gently over Athens. You stand one final time upon the ancient hill where the story began. The noise of the city has faded. The markets are quiet. The footsteps of travellers have disappeared. Only the soft movement of the wind remains. It passes through the olive branches above you. It carries the scent of the sea below. For a moment, everything feels connected. The tree, the stone, the water, the sky, the same landscape that witnessed the rivalry between Athena and Poseidon now rests peacefully beneath the stars. Thousands of years have passed since the old stories were first told. The people who prayed here are gone. The voices that spoke the names of the gods beside sacred fires have become distant echoes. Yet the story remains. That is the strange power of memory. A god can disappear from worship, a temple can fall, a civilization can change, but the stories people leave behind continue travelling. The contest between Athena and Poseidon survives because it speaks about something much older than Athens itself. It speaks about humanity. You look toward the olive tree. Athena's gift was never simply a plant. It represented patience. The understanding that great things require time. A city is built slowly. Knowledge is gained slowly. Wisdom is created through experience, mistakes, and reflection. The olive tree does not rush. It grows through seasons. It survives through hardship. It remains standing even after generations have passed. Perhaps this is why ancient Athenians saw themselves within it. They too hope to endure. They too hope their creations would outlive them. Then you look toward the sea. Poseidon's realm stretches endlessly beneath the moonlight. The waves move in and out. They do not hurry. They do not stop. They have touched countless shores before Athens existed. They will continue long after every human structure has disappeared. This is Poseidon's lesson. Human beings create, but they do not control everything. The sea teaches humility. Time teaches humility. Mortality teaches humility. The ancient Greeks understood this deeply. Their myths were filled with heroes who achieved incredible things but still faced limits. Kings lost kingdoms. Warriors grew old. Cities fell. Even the gods themselves experienced conflict, fear, and change. The story of Athena and Poseidon carries this truth. The goddess won, but the god remained. Victory did not erase rivalry. Power did not erase dependence. Athena's city still needed Poseidon's sea. Poseidon's waters still carried ships built through human intelligence. Neither force existed completely alone. You remember the beginning of the journey. You remember the hill before it had a famous name. You remember Poseidon arriving with the sound of waves and thunder. You remember the trident striking stone. You remember Athena kneeling quietly and planting the olive. Two gifts. Two visions of the future. The sea, the tree, the contest appeared to ask which power Athens needed most. But perhaps the deeper question was different. How could Athens survive without either? A city needs dreams. It needs courage. It needs creativity. But it also needs caution. It needs humility. It needs respect for forces greater than itself. The Greeks preserved both gods because they understood this balance. They did not erase Poseidon because he lost. They didn't ignore Athena because the sea remained dangerous. They allowed both truths to exist together. And perhaps that is why this ancient story still feels alive. Every person experiences a similar struggle. You build plans. You seek knowledge. You try to create order. But life remains unpredictable. Unexpected storms arrive. Paths change. The world reminds you that not everything can be controlled. And yet, like Athena's olive tree, you continue growing. You adapt. You endure. You create meaning within uncertainty. The stars above Athens shine brighter now. The moon rests above the Acropolis. The old stones are quiet. The sacred fires are gone. The voices of ancient worshippers have faded. But the landscape still holds their memory. The olive tree beside the sea. The symbol of a city caught between wisdom and nature. The reminder that humanity has always lived between what it can shape and what it must accept. The final mystery remains. Did Poseidon truly hate Athena? Perhaps the answer was never only about anger. Perhaps it was about recognition. Poseidon wanted to be seen. Athena represented another path. The city chose wisdom, but wisdom never meant forgetting power. The Greeks knew that, and perhaps that is why they left both gods upon the same hill, one above, one below, one watching the city, one surrounding it. Together they created a story that lasted longer than temples, kingdoms, and names. A story about balance, a story about memory, a story about accepting that life is both beautiful and uncertain. Now the wind becomes softer. The olive leaves move slowly. The sea below continues its quiet rhythm, wave after wave, like a breath, like a heartbeat. The ancient rivalry has become peaceful. The anger has become distant. The struggle has become wisdom. And as you remain beneath the stars of Greece, you can imagine the old city resting around you, the marble cool beneath your feet, the night air gentle against your face, the sound of the sea carrying stories from one generation to another. Athena's olive tree still stands in memory. Poseidon's waves still return to the shore. And between them, the human story continues, quietly, patiently, like the turning of the earth beneath the endless sky.